And we are back with another great episode of Liam Picks Fights. Today on the show, we will be breaking down UFC Vegas 35 from a betting perspective. I am very grateful to be joined by a star-studded panel today from the MMA betting community. We've got Paul Shaughnessy from the Dogger Pass podcast. We've got Almac Odds, and we've got MMA Uncle Weezy, all going to break down this card for me. Giga Chikadze, Edson Barboza. It is an absolutely thunderous main event, and I know everybody in the community is looking forward to it. So without further ado, I'm going to bring each one of my guests on the show. First and foremost, we got the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour, everybody's uncle, your favorite uncle and mine, MMA Uncle Weezy. How you doing, brother?
I cannot complain, Liam. It's great to be on your show with that energy that you always bring, man. I am fired up to break down this card with all you guys here. So many good fights on this one. So many great spots. Can't wait to get into it with you, brother.
Absolutely. The pleasure is all mine, my friend. Next up, we've got Almac Odds coming to us all the way from the Great White North of Canada. Almac, brother, how are you today?
I'm awesome, man. Yeah, you guys were saying before we went live that you were liking this card a little bit better than last week. Honestly, I had a good week last week, but sometimes these lower level cards are these type of ones that I clean up on. And with all due respect, there's some fighters making their UFC debuts here. There's some fighters that probably should be higher up on the card. So it's pretty low level, but it is what it is. I'm still here for some heavy betting action with plays on almost every fight on this card.
Absolutely, Al. I couldn't agree with you more, man. This should be a much better opportunity, and I'm glad to hear that you cleaned up last week, and I can't say the same. I just missed profit, came in 0.22 units short last week. Had a lot of good reads, but ended up giving the bookies back some money on a Clay Guido play that had some promise to it, but ended up not getting it done. But without further ado, we've got our man all the way from the Dogger Pass podcast, an absolute legend. I had the pleasure of one time going on MMA Lock of the Night show with this man. We had a great time then. I expect we're going to have a great time now. Paul Shaughnessy, how you doing, brother?
Hey, happy to be on the show. Obviously, yeah, we had a good time breaking down the card on Locke's podcast, and I'm here at the Mayo Media compound. So mind it, like I'll mute it, but there's a road here, so there may be a little bit of traffic. I wanted to be able to smoke some cigs while I was breaking down the fights with you guys, so I had to be outside here.
Absolutely. The only way we'll take it is if it is authentic. And if we don't have you smoking cigs and having a good time, I feel like we're only getting 50%, my man. We want you kicked back, relaxing, enjoying, and ready to party for this card.
I'm never allowed to smoke on cards, or when I'm breaking down the fights with Cody, because we're inside, obviously. So I thought,
Absolutely.
You know what? Weather's nice. It rains so much here out in Halifax, Nova Scotia. It's just like, I got to be outside. I got to enjoy, the weather while I've got it here. But, yeah, pretty interesting card. You guys seem to like this card a little bit more than me from a betting perspective. I've got a few spots that I'm in on, but interested to hear what you guys got to say.
Awesome. Well, without further ado then, boys, we will kick it off the way that we always do. We start from the bottom of the fight card and work our way up. But with that being said, we're going to just kick it to a couple people that we've got in the chat. My man Monk has been in since before we got started. He's got a few picks. He's got a few bets. And I know that he did a balls deep breakdown with my man, Uncle Weezy. So if you guys are looking for content during the week, oh my goodness, I can't recommend these enough. Balls deep breakdown, stat diggers. MMA Uncle Weezy is always breaking it down from a statistical standpoint. We got people shouting out the man. DFS by the numbers says, let's go Weezy. Absolutely appreciate all you guys. Chris, for the love of MMA, is in the chat. Says, hey, let's get it. A couple spots better than last week. Couldn't agree more, Chris. Let's get rolling. So without further ado, we will start with a fight that I have action on, a fight that I'm fired up about, and frankly, a fight that I think should produce fireworks, as the first fight of UFC cards often have a way of doing. And this is Mana Martinez and Guido Cannetti in the bantamweight division, 135 pounds. And I'm really excited to see how this fight plays out. I have already teased that I've got some action here, but we'll kick it to Weezy first. Weezy, how do you feel about this fight, brother?
It's a great curtain jerker. There have been so many great fights opening up cards that usually end inside the distance. They usually have got a lot of fireworks. They're usually the kind of fights where if you have the winner in your DraftKings lineup, you're going to be optimal with that guy. So this is one of those fights that fits perfectly into that category, in my opinion, man. Manny Martinez, 8-2, 0-1 in the UFC in his Contender Series spot, but all 8 of those wins coming by way of knockout. So we got a guy that really just starches people there. And then he's going to be facing off against a guy who's going to be collecting Social Security in a few years here, Guido Cannetti at 41 years old. Man has got a 4-inch height advantage, a 2-inch reach advantage. He's 16 years younger. He's got a ton of power. He's got his whole career ahead of him being 25 years old. One of my favorite bets on the card for the entire card is the fight doesn't go to decision for this one, because I got to believe that Manny Martinez is going to get this dude out of here early. And if he doesn't, we could see Cannetti get to the grappling. He's got a decent submission game. He shoots for a lot of takedowns. About 53% of his fights are taking place in control time positions. So, potentially Cannetti could find a path to victory with his grappling and with his wrestling, but I think the most likely outcome is that Manny starches this dude in the first round.
I think that there's a lot of merit to that, Weezy. You know that I am agreeing with you largely on that pick. I got a lot of action that says the same, but I will kick it to Al Mack before I give my take on this fight. Al, how do you feel?
Yeah, I honestly don't know a whole lot about these two guys. Some of these fights like this, I think 12 fights on the card. I broke down really deep, about 6 of them. But this one is kind of more just the eye test and leaning on statistics. I will say this: you got a big favorite here, Martinez, 16 years younger than Cannetti. Now, I'm not looking
Al,
back
I'm
at
having a
odds
little
here,
trouble hearing you for a second.
Oh yeah.
Do you mind if I boot you for just 1 second and bring you right back in?
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Or
it wasn't
maybe
just
it's on
it wasn't
my
just
end.
you, Liam. No, it wasn't just you. It was coming through really weird for me too.
Yeah,
Okay,
the audio was all muffled and stuff because I think it's like an internet lag issue.
Okay.
Oh,
Hold on. We're
Hold
going
on.
to boot you real quick, and we'll bring you right back in, all right?
Yeah.
All right. So then, Paul, we'll kick it to you in the interim. How do you feel about this fight?
I'm actually I used this as a parlay piece. Fight doesn't go to decision. I parlayed it with the over 2.5 in the bantamweight. He stand versus Turcios. I just think that Manny Martinez. I mean, I saw actually. I'm not to steal your thunder, but I saw that Liam was on the plus 125 Manny Martinez by knockout. That's how I see the fight playing out. The guy swings hammers. You can finish Guido Cannetti. The guy's 41 years old. We've seen it time and time again. I just think that opportunity will be there. My only question and why I went the route of using it as a parlay piece and taking a much more juiced odds is like, I just don't know what Manny looks like when it gets extended deep. And I know Cannetti doesn't have a great history of finishing. So if Cannetti wins, he could very well win by decision. Then I lose the bet. But I figure Manny probably gets the job done. Maybe he just extends himself and kind of gasses and gets finished. Worst case scenario, but I think Manny by knockout is pretty clear. It's up to like what, minus 120 now. I think it's still a decent play at that price. I think it's probably good up to like minus 150, like a 60% win rate. So you got a great number at plus 125. But yeah, Manny by knockout. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that.
Yeah, and I could just say that if we light up the chat for 1 second, we can see that everybody in here is on violence. They're on Manny by knockout. They're on Cannetti looking like an old man. And I think that there's a lot of merit to all of those points, honestly. Al Mack is back. Al, you know what? It might even be audio or Wi-Fi on my end for some reason. Let me see if I can get a better connection on my other network. Sorry, boys. Give me 1 second here because I don't want it to persist for the whole stream.
So how's it going, Weezy?
Got to tell you, Paul, things are going just fine on my end, man. I am fired up with these fights, dude. I've got like 5 bets already, so I am going to be rooting for a lot of different guys on Saturday, and I'm not even done researching things yet, man. I might not even be done with the action here.
That's fair. Yeah. No, there's a lot of fights here, a lot of new fresh faces, so it's always a little bit difficult.
Yeah, you got to kind of dig back into the histories of these guys, see some regional scene footage, and that's what the heroes do, Paul. We get out there, we do the extra work, man. We do the research. We come on shows like this, break it down with some really smart dudes.
All right,
appreciate that always.
Yeah, so
and thank you to everybody who is bearing with us there for some technical difficulties. I think that we should be much better moving forward. Switch my stream over as well. Hopefully the Wi-Fi will be more reliable and hold out for us. So thank you very much for your patience and your consideration. Al, back to you.
So how do I sound now? Am I all clear now, or do I still have issues? Okay, so yeah.
Crystalline.
This fight, basically, you got a big favorite, and I'm not going with the dog, but I kind of got to go against the grain here. I know I got to lean with my trends, my statistics here with the bantamweight division. The over tends to cash more times than not, about a 55% rate over the last 18 months. So, and then you're looking at a fight where the total has moved down from 2.5 rounds to 1.5 rounds. Now, I see 1.5 rounds, the over at plus 105. I don't really want that. I would want closer to like plus 130. But I got to say, if you can get fight starts round 2 at plus money, I like that spot better than going with an under. And while I think Martinez likely does get the job done, probably finishes this fight, wherever the value lies on this one, if you ask me, I think the value's on the plus money side. That Cannetti was able to go the distance with Diego Rivas. Besides that, he's had a lot of first round or early second round stoppage losses. So, I do think that the prevailing, opinion is probably accurate that this fight probably ends early, but fight starts round 2. That's just a typical Al Mac spot for me. You can get that plus money. I'm going to be all over it.
Heck yeah, man. And I am going to be going the other way here. But I will say that I played this number when it looked a lot different, the landscape. So I took the under 1.5 rounds. I took it at plus 110, and I saw that the line was actually moving the other direction briefly. So I took it again at plus 120. But the line has since gone down to minus 135. So I would agree with Al Mac that it's no longer a playable range. Maybe it is, but I think that that's probably like an even money, type of outcome at that point. It's like 50-50. I don't know that you're getting a betting value at that point. But what I can say is I think it's going to go under 1.5 rounds for a number of reasons. Number one, Mana has a lot of power in his hands, right? And we've seen that throughout his career. It's not just like he's, getting ground and pound stoppages or something. No, he's knocking people out cold. And he's done it on the regional scene, but he's done it against guys who have gone on to have serious professional careers, Ricky Turcios among them. And, I actually think that people might be looking at that split decision loss and saying, well, this guy just can't go the distance. No, the problem in that fight was a lot different, which was that the guy was massive, way longer, way taller. And so the guy was fighting him from like outside a distance where Mana could land effective shots. But that's not what we're going to see from Guido. Guido is like anthropomorphically a small bantamweight. He's got big muscles, but he's a small guy. He's 41 years of age. He's been dropped 3 times in his last 4 losses. And, those fights ended by submission because that's what the person who was fighting him would like prefer as like their finishing method. But that wasn't because he couldn't have been knocked out. A lot of those times he was hurt on the feet, and it led to like a club and sub type scenario. I don't think Mana Martinez is going to club and sub him. I think he's going to just bludgeon him. And I also think that, it's very likely that he gets him out of there in the first round, but everybody's on it. And so it's something that if you hit early in the week, this is the reason I like playing with Bet Online is that they get their props out early and you kind of have that chance if you're paying attention, if you get the work done early. But otherwise, a lot of those prop spots get kind of killed. So Mana by KO at plus 125, I have a unit on that and I feel really confident in it. But I also would say, at minus 110, at minus 120, I would look at the inside the distance or not play it at all at that point because the chalk price isn't that much different And, if you're going to play the chalk, I wouldn't want to be paying chalk on a knockout. I would prefer to pay chalk on an inside the distance because I do think Mana is far superior in this fight. But, I also think that the guys that Guido Cannetti beat aren't that good. And, I went back and watched those fights, and I just wasn't impressed. Guido Cannetti actually looks more impressive in his losses than he does in his wins. In his wins, he looks like a bad wrestler, like a cut rate wrestler. Whereas in his losses, he looks like a fun and exciting kickboxer who's not that good. And I think that he's going to go out looking like a fun and exciting kickboxer who's not that good. And he's probably going to go out the way a lot of old legends do on the canvas. So I'm taking Mana Martinez. I'm taking him by knockout. I'm taking the under 1.5 rounds at plus money. I'm proud of the plays that, I'm going to beat the closing line on those by a lot. But, I also think when I beat the closing lines by a lot and the whole market's with me, that's what makes me scared nowadays because every time I get good closing line value, I tend to lose my bet. So let's see how it goes. But that's what I'm feeling like. That's how I feel about that fight. I'm very convicted in Mana. And, as the line continues to drop down to that minus 280 number, I'm considering making him a parlay piece as well, if I'm being honest. So I haven't done that yet, but that's what I'm considering. And we've got some people with me here. Monk is with me all the way, and I appreciate that. But we got DFS by the numbers saying that will be a sweat, and that's fair point too. So God bless, appreciate that. And we're on to the next one, boys. Another fun fight. We'll go 10 pounds higher. Jamall Emmers, Pat Sabatini, and honestly, pretty high-level fight for the second fight on the card, in my opinion. These guys, both regional successes, both champions on the regional scene, kind of came into the UFC with some fanfare, and now it's where the rubber hits the road. One of these fights that the UFC loves to make is those prospect matchups. Who's going to be the real prospect, and who do we start feeding to other guys that we want to be prospects? And I think Weezy, I'd love to hear what you have to say about this one, but I'm expecting a pretty fun fight here and marginally competitive.
I consider it to be one of the best fights on the card. Two really hyped, really talented, really well-rounded mixed martial artists here. Sabatini's 30 years old. Emmers is 32. You got Emmers is just a huge featherweight, dude. I mean, 4-inch reach advantage over Sabatini. He's going to be 2 inches taller. He's got more experience. He's got 6 more fights. He's got about 100 more minutes in the cage. What I see from these guys is, some really nice striking. He uses his length from Emmers. His knees up the middle were really good in the Chirico fight. He was piecing him up in the first round, and Chirico just walked through a lot of it. He's just a really tough dude. Sabatini's also got some really nice striking in his own right. He's kind of underrated with his striking. He knocked out Jordan to Tony, and it was absolutely vicious. He really put it on him quickly. But what we really do see more out of Sabatini is him using that wrestling to get the fight to the ground, and then he uses that high-level jiu-jitsu to really grind on you, to try to get your back, to try to get that arm underneath the chin and put you to sleep, and he's very good at it. The thing, and I've been saying it all week, and you're going to have to listen to me say it again, it pisses me off when wrestlers don't wrestle. And that Jamall Emmers versus Giga Chikadze fight is one of the best examples of fight IQ or lack thereof losing you a fight. When you wait 7.5 minutes to shoot your first takedown against a guy like Chikadze, and you've got the kind of wrestling that Emmers has in his back pocket, God damn, it makes me worry about the fight IQ. And I hate betting on fighters that don't have good IQ, because then I wind up in front of the TV screaming at it, shoot a fucking takedown, shoot a takedown, and they don't do it. It gets frustrating.
Marvin Vittori, Israel Adesanya.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the other thing. It's exhausting when you wrestle in a 5-round fight. Offensive wrestling is exhausting, but in a 3-round fight, you got time. You can use that wrestling. You should be using it every single round. Pat Sabatini had a great debut, really ran it on Tristan Connolly for the first 2 rounds, and then he kind of took the 3rd round off. However, that's good fight IQ. When you're shaving ass for the first 2 rounds and you're ahead maybe 20-17, 20-18, you just don't want to get knocked out. You don't want to get finished in the 3rd round. So even though it was Pat Sabatini's first UFC fight, I think he showed some really great fight IQ. I like his wrestling. I like his jiu-jitsu. Jamall Emmers is really exciting, really fun to watch. He's got a lot of talent, a lot of athleticism. I don't even know who the hell's going to win this fight, but I'm going to lean Sabatini just because I think that while they're in the cage, he's going to make the better decisions. He's going to make the decisions that'll lead to his arm being raised after it's over. But both these guys are really good. Both these guys are really hot prospects. I can't wait to see how this one shakes out. I'm picking Sabatini, but not with a ton of confidence.
Absolutely. I feel you there, man. And this is, when I was describing this as competitive, I think that there's going to be reasonable people that take both guys. But I really like the points that you're raising about fight IQ. It's one of the most important considerations in betting that often gets overlooked, because you can't put a statistic by it. But it's something that you can see when you watch somebody and you can evaluate, why'd they do that? Or, why is he not pressing his advantage? And I will say that was the thing that stood out to me the most about Jamall Emmers was that he doesn't necessarily press his advantages in a way that makes sense. And that doesn't mean that he doesn't have advantages, right? And I do think that he's one of those guys that at any point he could come in clicking and, change the way that people perceive his career and be a real talent. But I agree with you, man. There's a lot of unknowns in this matchup. Paul, how do you feel?
Going back and watching the Giga fight, what was kind of impressive to me is that he was out striking Giga. And I mean, especially late in the fight, I guess when he introduced that threat of the wrestling, like the guy's got, 74-inch reach. He's got 4-inch reach advantage in this fight. My boy Cody was telling me, he was pumping up Sabatini, telling me to bet Sabatini. But my initial gut reaction is, if we got like wrestler versus wrestler, if it gets negated, I feel like we saw in the Cachero fights, like he landed 103 significant strikes. Sabatini only landed like 21 against Tristan Connolly last time out. So if this comes down to two guys standing, I'm going to trust the guy with a 4-inch reach and the higher volume. Fight IQ be damned. Hopefully he just kind of pulls it out. If he's able to if the fight it transpires on the feet, and I'm not convinced that Pat Sabatini is just going to be able to take him down or control the action in that sense, I'm still leaning towards Jamall Emmers, but I don't feel great about it. I don't have any cash on this one.
Yeah, and the only thing that I would point to that I thought was like a level of concern for me regarding Jamall Emmers, because I agree with you that he was outstriking Giga for the last 6 minutes of that fight. I do think it was in large part due to fatigue, but also to the point that Weezy made, he kneed him in the body at one point, and it kind of changed the way Giga was fighting. He did not like being in the clinch at all with Jamall. Jamall is really dangerous in that position, and he felt a few of those knees, both against the cage and in space, and he was like committed then to throwing like 4-piece combos as a response anytime he tried to grab the clinch because he really didn't like that position. So, but what concerned me was that he took him down and then got reversed by Giga Chikadze. Like he was on top in half guard. Honestly, should be a really secure position for somebody who's a competent grappler. It's like one of the most common rest positions in the UFC, and he gets reversed by a kickboxer. I was like, come on, man. That just seemed a little concerning to me for somebody from such a high-level background. Al, how do you feel about this fight?
Yeah, this one is interesting because it looks like Pat Sabatini, an underdog. He seems like a popular play this week. And yeah, I think I got to side with him here. I think, it looks like both guys have had some stoppage wins in their career. And then once they get to the UFC, they've had a bunch of fights go the distance. Emmers going the distance, like Paul said, against Giga was super impressive in my opinion, especially in hindsight. And then just to comment on what Paul said as well, with Sabatini, I feel like he was kind of coming out with a more wrestle-heavy game plan because of the short notice nature of the Tristan Connolly fight. And I think Connolly was also fighting down a weight class. So I think that was kind of just like his game plan to kind of wear him out. But again, I feel like these guys, I feel like this fight is kind of destined to go the distance. Like, not to sound like a broken record, but I'm leaning on the stats for these opening fights on this card. And in the men's featherweight division over the last year and a half, one of the most probable and profitable division trends, 72% to the over in this fight, over 2.5 rounds minus 200. Honestly, I still think it's a good spot. I think both guys, yeah, they do have the ability to stop fights, but I think the matchmakers are kind of testing each other here. They know both of these guys' strengths, and I think that this is kind of a stalemate. And I think it's a close 50-50 fight type deal. And if this fight's 1-1 going into the third round, I'm cool with being on the side of plus money, win or lose, to be honest. And I think especially if it's a foregone conclusion based on the market that this fight is going to go the distance. Honestly, I think this is, I really don't like betting overs at, a big chalk prices, but I just think this is a fight that's pretty much destined to go the distance. I think a good parlay piece in this fight is the over 2.5.
I would tend to agree with you there as well. I think that if I was to rate where I saw finishing upside, I think that Emmers probably has more upside on the feet to find a finish. I think that Sabatini on the ground is probably more likely to find a finish, but I think altogether it's not a very high probability outcome for either guy. Neither guy has been able to connect with like serious power punches that really hurt somebody so far in the UFC, to the best of my recollection. So yeah, I think that that's probably a pretty safe spot, and maybe a way that I'll consider targeting that fight. I have not taken any action either way. Although I will refer to our friends at betonline.ag and see what the current market odds are for that fight. We are currently sitting with a plus 129 on Pat Sabatini and a minus 149 on Jamall Emmers. So, yeah, I think that, the public's getting hip to that number a little bit. I think Sabatini was available plus 135 for most of the week. So, yeah, I think if you want to get in on Sabatini at that money line price, probably do it soon because it looks like the market is starting to move his direction. But with that being said, we can move right along. We've got, I believe, the lone women's fight on the offering, JJ Aldrich and Vanessa Demopoulos at 125 pounds. And we really have a case of somebody who's a UFC, kind of proven talent against somebody who's not. And I think it's an interesting enough fight. I've seen, pretty strong opinions in favor of Aldrich for most of the week, although I've seen some people try and come up with sneaky takes on the submission prop and certain things. So interested to see how you boys come out on this. Is there a value to be had here? I'm historically terrible at betting women's fights.
You want me to start it off, Liam?
Absolutely, Weezy.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we're going to go the same direction every time here.
Oh, yeah, cool. All right, yeah. You got to kind of like JJ here. Vanessa's taking this fight on short notice. She's coming up a weight class. Those are two things. When you pile them on top of each other, it's a big roadblock in your way to getting a win. And then if you just look at the measurables here, let me get my stats up for this one. Vanessa's 4 years older. JJ Aldrich is four inches taller. And then we've got an 8-inch reach advantage. Vanessa Demopoulos has a 59-inch reach. So from what I've seen on tape, Vanessa's striking is just not on JJ's level, period. And Vanessa's not a great wrestler either. What she is very opportunistic in the grappling exchanges whenever it gets there. And she's kind of like, I consider it to be like a Paul Craig type in that her grappling is dangerous. However, she doesn't have to get a takedown to use the grappling. She'll pull guard. She'll get to your back from a clinch position. She's very opportunistic with how she gets her submissions. So, JJ is going to really have to mind her P's and Q's here, but with the size advantage that JJ has here, she should be able to keep her at bay, avoid the grappling exchanges, piece her up from range. I would pick JJ Aldrich by decision. When you watch the tape on Vanessa Demopoulos, you have to hit her in the head with a shovel to get her out of there. She is stupid tough. If Aldrich knocks her out, I would be shocked, but it would be quite a feather in her cap if she did. I'm picking JJ Aldrich by decision. I just don't want to overthink this one too much.
I think that is a completely fair way to look at this fight, Weezy. And, I saw a lot of the same things that you're saying. She does look like she has a pretty solid chin, but, something that Z's MMA always says that I really like to harken back to is how do you know somebody has a good chin? Because they get punched in the face all the time. And I think that she really is so hittable. It's kind of crazy. Like I've seen very few fighters who are so willing to be hit, and she seems to take some pleasure in it. Like walks forward, smiles, keeps throwing while she's getting just hammered with shots, and doesn't turn to takedowns as a defense mechanism very often. Like she is looking to continue engaging in the slugfest most of the time, and it's a little baffling to me, but it does make for some entertaining fights. And man, it's an interesting one. Paul, how about you, man? How do you feel?
A lot of the things that Weezy said, more or less, like I kind of think, 8-inch reach advantage at flyweight is absurd. 59-inch reach, like T-Rex arms running around in the octagon here, absurd. I think that's got to be the shortest reach I've ever seen in MMA history, like UFC history at least. Like insane. I used to make fun of like other fighters. I forget who off the top of my head, but they had like 61, 62. 59 is just baffling. Like I'm going to be staring at her arms the entire fight. But yeah, I went back and watched like her versus Sam Hughes, and she was doing pretty good in that fight. She was dominating a little bit early on. And then, as the fight goes on, ends up getting caught in a submission. I wouldn't be shocked to see a finish, but she does seem to, get hit and enjoy getting hit, I suppose, in a lot of her fights. I think, JJ by decision is definitely the most likely outcome. I'm not touching that money line at minus 400 just because, you start betting minus 400s on JJ Aldrich and you get caught in an armbar from guard. Like that, this shit happens in MMA. But what is the price on it is, Aldrich by decision. Sorry, I should be looking at this better. What is the price on that?
I'm trying to take a look myself, Paul.
It's like they don't even. I'm on best fight odds, and I just Aldrich by decision. It's minus. It's already up to like minus 170, minus 200 in some spots.
Minus 160 bet online, but still,
Five Dimes has it at minus 145. I'd be in at that. When it gets up to minus 200, that's just a little bit too rich for my blood. I'll tell you that much, though. Bet Online has it minus 160. I think like minus 150, minus 160. If you really want to get action in on this fight, bringing it down from the minus 400 to like a minus 150 would be the preferred play here. But it's a pass for me.
Absolutely. Before we kick it to Al, I just want to say we got Narco in the comments. Thanks, brother. Good luck this weekend. Hope you crush. Appreciate you, Narco. Hope you crush it as well. We got 19 live viewers rocking with us, and we appreciate each and every one of you guys for doing so. Just wanted to say our friends at Bet Online also have odds on this fight, minus 425. They're hanging on JJ Aldrich. Plus 325 is the comeback on Vanessa Demopoulos. So I am not taking action on this fight, but Al Mac, maybe you've got something to offer.
Yeah, like honestly, I know that there's a lot being made about this reach advantage, but Cynthia Arceo is definitely not JJ Aldrich, but Cynthia Arceo has the same reach that JJ Aldrich. How do I sound?
Now you're better.
Sound okay? Okay. Sorry about that. So yeah, Cynthia Arceo has the same reach as JJ Aldrich, and I know that it's kind of uncomparable the two. But the spot, the RC over the last fight, knocked her out in 30 seconds. So I know there's a lot made of this reach, but still, I still see that JJ Aldrich should not be a minus 400, minus 375 favorite over anybody at the UFC level. And this is one of those fights where I think that the value is on the under here. I'm a against the grain, high volume, low stakes kind of guy, and this is the type of fight I always look for these types of fights. In the flyweight division, especially in the lower ranks, the under cash is at like a 40% rate. So that means that at plus 155 or better, you got to start looking at unders. And I think the volume of Aldrich is she's able to probably push Demopoulos against the fence and probably just get like a standing TKO from volume. Or, Demopoulos pulls off a huge upset here and either grabs a neck or an arm bar or something like that. I gotta say, I mean, this trend will go on for forever. It's I don't know exactly what it is, but these types of fights, everybody thinks it's it's a foregone conclusion that it's going to go the distance. And when you got a minus 375 fighter who's a lower ranking fighter against a girl who's pretty dangerous off of her back and pretty dangerous on the ground, I just think that this screams shocking stoppage. And I feel like give me plus 280 on the under 2.5 rounds at small stakes. If you're giving me a free bet or at small stakes, I'm all over that. I think there's a chance that this one of these girls ends up finishing this fight.
Al, I gotta be honest with you. I think that you just swayed me so hard into that direction. And the reason being is this. I have a criteria in my head that I like to think of if I'm going to target an under, if I'm going to target a fight to end inside the distance, anything like that, which is like both people have to have a path to finishing the fight. If it's like I need one person to get it right, that could be a recipe for disaster. And how many times have we seen somebody, Jacob Malkoun, Hassan, perfect example of a fight where it's like if you bet the fight doesn't go to decision because you thought Hassan's going to knock him out, it's like Malkoun isn't going to do anything to get him out of there. He's just going to hold on to him the whole time. So it's like, for me, I want to see two people that have a chance to finish. And, man, I think that JJ has a huge chance to finish this fight striking. And, if I had to make one criticism of Demopoulos, it's that she's willing to use the grappling even when it's not effective. Like that Corey McKenna fight, it was completely ineffective. She wasn't able to get anything going. Like, granted, she had Corey McKenna defensive from the top position, but she was in the top position for like 11 minutes or 10 minutes. It's like, you're just not going to win fights spending 11 minutes on your back most of the time. And especially if you get somebody like Aldrich, she's got the reach and everything, could probably still be landing ground and pound from posture. I don't think like a ground and pound finish is out of the question for JJ Aldrich. I think just because the fight hits the ground doesn't mean she can't finish. But I do think that if the fight is on the ground, then the other chick has a chance to finish too. And, Demopoulos, for all her flaws on the feet, like, what's the one thing that she has going for her? She hits pretty hard. She knocked out that last chick on the first exchange, basically, because she wings really hard hooks with no regard for her own defense. So it's like, for me, I think I'm going to have to get involved, probably a half unit or more on that under spot because I really like the sound of that. And, Almac also made a good point about the fact we got a huge favorite. Massive favorites tend to finish. And we've seen that trend persist for a long time in the UFC. And, just because it's a women's fight, a lot of times those unders do get overlooked. And, man, I think that that's a really decent spot, Al. Thank you for the shout. I'm going to be taking a look at that myself. And if it hits, I got to buy you a beer. So next up on the card, we've got Dustin Jacoby, Darren Stewart. This is a fight that I have not gone tremendously deep on the tape. Because I feel like it's kind of a junker fight. Darren Stewart, Dustin Jacoby, these are guys I'm typically looking to fade, not guys I'm looking to back. Dustin Jacoby, I think, kind of has a questionable chin. I think his grappling is like improving, but not good. I think that Jacoby's not typically a guy I want to back. Darren Stewart, I actually have kind of liked some of the improvements I saw from Darren Stewart over the course of his middleweight career. But, talking about what Weezy said, fight IQ hasn't always been there for Darren Stewart. Protecting yourself in the fight hasn't always been there for Darren Stewart, sometimes reckless in those fights. And, I thought that the Eric Anders look was really bad. I bet on Eric Anders in that spot the second time out because I had Darren Stewart the first time and got the push. And I was like, man, Darren Stewart is never going to beat Eric Anderson. While it looked closer the second time out, I really didn't think he had much for him. And Eric Anders doesn't strike me as like a guy on the rise either. So this is a pass for me in all likelihood. I think that the dog money that came in on Darren Stewart at the bigger number made sense because this is a fight where I see as a lot of unknowns and either guy could get chinned here. But, kind of looks like an ugly fight to me. Weezy, how do you feel?
Yeah, same thing with me, man. I'm probably going to be staying away from this one. By the way, while you guys were talking on the last fight, I went into my database and I sorted it by reach, and I've got over 550 fighters in there. The lowest reach in the UFC prior to Demopoulos was 60 inches, and that's Tisha Torres. So Vanessa Demopoulos is setting a record for the lowest reach in the history of the UFC. And then as far as the Jacoby Stewart fight goes, you got Stewart, who's really a natural middleweight, moving up to light heavyweight. His first fight at light heavyweight was against another middleweight in Eric Anders. So, we're going to see Jacoby be bigger here. He's going to be 3 inches taller. He's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage. He's been in the game longer than Stewart, but, some of those years were spent professional kickboxing. If I look at my numbers, I do see a nice little advantage in the striking statistics for Jacoby. About 3% better in the striking accuracy, 10% better in striking defense. And Jacoby's got some power. He's landing a knockdown on 0.9% of the significant strikes that he lands, and he's getting knocked down on 0.8 of the significant strikes that he absorbs. So, and it's the same thing for Stewart. While Stewart's definitely not as chinny as Jacoby, he also brings some power here. Some people are saying that Stewart's path to victory is through the grappling. I don't really see that. I see 31 takedown attempts in 13 fights for Darren Stewart, so I don't see him being an active wrestler, somebody that wins fights with his wrestling. He's got 16% control time in the UFC, but he's allowing 35%. So, I guess if I don't overthink this fight too much, I'm probably just picking Jacoby if it stays standing, but I just haven't seen a lot of Jacoby that I like. I think that the fights that he's won, he's probably lost. That Grisham fight, he did not win. And the Cutelaba fight, I think that Cutelaba easily 10-8'd him in the first round. And then there were 2 really close rounds that could have went either way that the judges gave to Jacoby. I mean, Jacoby could easily be 0-2 in his last 2 fights. And his only win is over Justin Ledette. And Justin Ledette's just not UFC level right now. So, I guess if I had to pick, I'd pick Stewart, but the pick is to stay away, Liam. I'm not betting this fight. I'm not betting an over-under. I'm not betting a money line. I'm just staying away from this one.
I think that is always a fair take. Money saved is money earned, my friend. And sometimes the right decision is just to make a smart pass. And I don't know if that's the wave here. Maybe the other boys have seen a spot that we're missing, but I feel you on that. I just want to announce what the odds are for this bout for people interested. BetOnline.ag hanging -185 on Dustin Jacoby's money line. The comeback on Darren Stewart is +160. For whatever it's worth, I feel like Darren Stewart has been a pretty popular underdog play in terms of my Twitter feed this week. And so, Paul, how do you feel about this fight? I think kind of a slot fest.
Yeah, I was so heavy on Justin Jacoby against Max Grishin. I was just like, Grishin's not a great wrestler. It's going to be on the feet. We've got a guy who is a glory kickboxer. He's just going to, dance circles around him, land at will. And that was the day I told myself, luckily, I got the robbery in my favor. I didn't score for him. I had tons of money on it, got bailed out. And that day I said, I'm not betting this guy against anybody. I hate Darren Stewart at 205 pounds. His frame isn't really fit for this weight class. There's really not much like against Anders. Obviously, the first one, there's the foul, but he was getting stomped. The second fight, he had a little bit of success, and then all it took was Eric Anders to get poked in the eye before he turned it on and tried to and absolutely straight up murdered him. Gun to my head, if I had to bet something on this, I would bet Stewart by submission. Not that he goes for a lot of takedowns, but I'm definitely not touching Dustin Jacoby at nearly 2-1 as a favorite. I learned my lesson from the Grishin fight. Even if he has a striking advantage, that doesn't mean he's going to do anything with the striking advantage. He's a complete fade moving forward. I don't have any cash on it yet, but I see it's plus 1,200, plus 925 bet online. 5 Dimes has it at plus 1225 right now. If I felt the need to be invested in this shit show of a fight, I'd take the absolute flyer and just a small sprinkle on Stewart by sub, because he's done it to Marquez and a few other people. He's got a pretty decent guillotine if he can snatch your neck. And I don't think Jacoby, like I'm sure he's improved, but I don't think his Jacoby's grappling is anything to get excited about whatsoever.
I feel you there for sure, Paul. And, I think we've seen these guys go to decision a lot in the UFC, but because of those chinniness metrics that we were talking about from Weezy, and that was something that stood out to me in the data as well, was that neither one of these guys has a stellar chin. Both of them have, somewhat decent power. Kind of hard to rate Darren Stewart's power at 205 pounds. I agree with Paul's concerns about his size and his frame, but I also think that may lend some credibility to the finishing upside for Jacoby. And so when I was just looking at the fight on Bet Online, the only thing that stood out to me was just that the under 2.5 is hanging at plus 140 on a light heavyweight fight. That's something that I haven't played yet. Not sure that I'm going to end up on it, but if I was to target something in the fight, like Paul was saying, that might be the way that I look, is that, two big guys swinging leather. And, the submission's a part of that. I do think that Darren Stewart's got a finishing path on the ground as well, even if Dustin Jacoby sounds like a good name for a fighter too. Al Mag, I'll kick it over to you, brother. What do you think?
Yeah, like full disclosure, I'm actually a huge Dustin Jacoby fan, just because I feel like he's like a combat sports journeyman. Like he was in Bellator, Glory. He's fought boxing. Like I feel like the only reason he came back to the UFC via the Contender Series was just because of the pandemic, and he needed to, he was struggling to find competition during the pandemic. Now, do I think he's a world beater? No, but I'm just a fan of him, just like how he's able to go out there and switch disciplines. You look at Darren Stewart, 5-4 in his last 9 with the 1 no contest, all 4 losses by decision. And Jacoby 3-0-1 since coming back to the UFC, and 2 of those 3 wins by decision. And one of my glory moments was Jacoby's last fight against Ian Kutabala. The fight goes the distance, yes, was like plus 300. And I was like, 100% this fight's going to go the distance, because Kutabala is going to try to kickbox the kickboxer. And I feel like the books are now wise to this, wise to this notion. And now you got it over 2.5 at minus 150. And like you said, the under sitting at like plus 140. I still like the over. And I got to say, I think Justin Jacoby, if this fight stays standing, I think he's going to win this fight rather easily. And I don't know if Stewart is smart enough to utilize his wrestling to the point that Jacoby's going to be able to, be nullified by it. And honestly, I'm fairly confident that Jacoby gets this fight done, just as a hard fade on Darren Stewart. I don't know if he's smart enough to go after Jacoby's weaknesses. And if the fight stays standing, Jacoby has that kind of style where he draws you in, he kind of lulls you, and a lot of guys just want to test their striking against the kickboxer, and I feel that's like exactly what's going to happen here. And I think Jacoby in a parlay spot, I'm all over that. And I don't like that minus 150 on the over 2.5 rounds. But if it gets a little bit better, minus 135 or something like that, I'll probably be on that as well.
Understood. So Al Mack, he is coming in with a interesting take. He's got Jacoby with some confidence. And, I just want to give a shout to Narco Cop. One of the interesting things he raised was, fun fact about Darren, his first 9 or 10 fights of his career were at 205, and he went something like 9-1 or 8-1. So I'll be honest, I did not know that. This is one of the fights I did less research on this week because I didn't see a play that I was very interested in on either side. But, I think that those are some interesting notes. We got Narco raising an interesting point about Darren, but I do think that the points that Al is raising about Jacoby are all fair. His pedigree as a kickboxer is far superior. Darren Stewart, where he's had success in the UFC is mostly in the top position. Like even that Kevin Holland fight where he looked really good, and like I honestly thought he got robbed, if not like jobbed out of a draw. I thought that was Darren was taking over from the 7.5 minute mark of that fight. And it was mostly from getting top position and slamming down hard punches. And, I think it's hard to hold down somebody who's got a lot of mass and size on you for long stretches of time. So we'll see if he's able to do that. But I think it's more likely that Paul's iteration where he gets a submission comes through for Darren than that he gets like a grappling game plan where he just holds him against the fence and takes him down for 15 minutes. I think that's very hard to do when you're giving up size, height, leverage. So that would be my only shout on that fight as we kick it down the road. We got a fight that I do have action on, boys. And I may live to regret this action. I've lived to regret Sam Alvey bets before, but by God, I'm going back to the well one last time because I feel like the UFC gave him one of the few fights on the roster that he could still win. It's Sam Alvey, it's Wellington Turman, and this is a really quick turnaround for somebody that got knocked out in June in Wellington Turman, and not knocked out like, I got hit with a couple shots, covered up, and the ref saved me. Like, no, I got out cold, sleeping on the ground for minutes, and I think it's kind of early for the UFC to be rushing him back. Think that because he's had a tough run in the UFC, he doesn't have a ton of say in his matchmaking, and he probably felt like he had to take this fight or get cut. I think that Sam Alvey should have been the favorite. And, I got to shout out Brady, DFS by the numbers, saying line should be flipped here. And that's how I felt, right? I'm going to kick off the breakdown for us this time because I'm on Sam Alvey here. I got 1 unit down at plus 125. Sam Alvey's currently sitting at plus 110. And then I also have 0.36 units on Sam Alvey inside the distance at plus 275. Reason I targeted those is quite simple. I watched back the tape on Wellington Turman, and I think that his striking for a long time was reliant on the fact that he's willing to take a shot and come forward. And a lot of guys get through on that on the regional scene. But when you get to the UFC, taking a shot and pointing at your chin isn't defense. And that is what he was doing in his earlier fights. If you go back and watch his UFC bouts, he would get cracked on the chin really hard multiple times, and he pointed his chin. And then we started seeing he couldn't point at his chin no more, right? Like he gets knocked out by Andrew Sanchez, not a crazy knockout artist, not somebody with tremendous power. That was in the first round. He is absolutely doing what I thought he was going to do. I bet on him in the Brunado Silva fight because I was like, man, his chin's not shot, right? He got knocked out once. Give the guy a break. I was like, he's going to come back here. He's going to have a better grappling game plan. He's going to get to his grappling early, and he's going to hold position. But the same exact problems that plagued him in his earlier fights, like getting the back and falling over the top, were still present in that fight. And so it leaves me in a position where I'm like, you can't beat UFC newcomers, right? You're barely clinging to your job in the organization. Sam Alvey, for all his faults, right? For all his 0-5-1 run in the UFC, he's fighting legit credible guys that are currently ranked in the light heavyweight top 15 that he put on Dream Street, that he almost knocked out in Ryan Spann, that he probably should have won decisions over in Daeun Chung. So that's what we see Sam Alvey doing, right? He's still having success with the lead hook. He's still hurting and rocking guys that are significantly better and more durable than Wellington Turman. Not to say Ryan Spann is the picture of durability, but he was kind of boxing up Daeun Chung and out kickboxing him. And I don't see why he can't do that to Wellington Turman here. I think Wellington Turman is going to be pressuring him towards the cage. Sam Alvey is underrated in his ability to not get taken down. He's underrated in his ability to break the clinch and to punish people that try to clinch him. I think that Sam Alvey's got paths to finish this fight. I think that Wellington Turman's cardio is not elite either. I think his durability is very poor. Granted, it's not as poor as I thought it would be in terms of his knockdown rate, but just the fact that it only took a handful of shots at close distance with those ground and pound shots from Bruno Silva just doesn't seem like he has UFC level durability to me. One thing that you need as an attribute to survive in the UFC is durability because people are going to hit you. And I don't know that Wellington Turman can take a hard shot anymore. And if this is Sam Alvey at 39, 40 years old, I get why we're saying this is out the door. Sam Alvey's 35, he's on a rough run. He's not been winning fights, but he's 35 years old. That's not out of the question for a middleweight by any means. And Wellington Turman, he's not beating guys his age. He's not beating veterans. He's not beating anybody, really. I don't see a tremendous upside in Wellington Turman. That's me. Weezy, I'm going to kick it to you with my hot take off my chest.
Yeah, man, not a hot take in my opinion, because I've also got 1 unit on Sam Alvey to win here. Just the straight money line bet at plus 130. Look,
you beat me, Weezy. Great job.
Yeah, man, it was one of those ones on Stat Diggers. Brady and I were talking about the fight. And after we were done, I was like, dude, I think I'm going to put money on Alvey. He goes, yeah, I already bet him during the show. I'm like, you prick, if you move the line, But I wound up getting in there at the same price. The thing about Alvey is he's got really good takedown defense. He has successfully defended 47 of 57 takedown attempts against him in the UFC. 82.46% takedown defense. And even in those takedowns, he's only been controlled 14% of his UFC career. So this is a guy that people know what Sam Alvey does. He's a counter striker. He wants to hurt you with his left hand. He's got good takedown defense. If you want to talk more about Sam Alvey's game, you're going to have a hard time because he really doesn't do anything else, does he? I mean, he stops takedowns, he throws counter punches, and he tries to knock you out. And he's pretty damn good at it. I mean, this guy's got a 58% knockout rate. He's had 33 wins. So that's 20 wins by knockout. 20 career wins by knockout. This dude's sleeping people, and he's got 50 professional fights. And then if we want to talk about Turman's ability to get the fight to the ground, here's a guy who has attempted 27 takedowns in only 4 fights. So that's like 7 takedown attempts per fight. He's only gotten 6 of them. And with that 6, he has managed 42% career control time in the UFC. Here's the problem with that. Sam Alvey, once you take him down, he gets right back up. This is a guy who's been training with Dan Henderson for the longest time. This guy knows how to stop a takedown, and he's been doing it for 13 years. So Turman's a very inefficient wrestler with a 22% takedown accuracy. And then you got Alvey with that 82.46% takedown defense over a 21 fight sample size. I don't see this fight getting to the ground. And if it doesn't get to the ground and you're getting knocked out by Andrew Sanchez and that Bruno Silva knockout, Jesus Christ, that was brutal, dude. He was out probably about 4 shots before the ref stopped it because it was ground and pound. And sometimes it's hard to notice that a guy's out. He was badly hurt there. It's too quickly for him to be coming around. For people that are saying 35 is too old, we got a 41-year-old bantamweight kicking off the card here. So 35 years old at middleweight or light heavyweight is not too old. Alvey's game is just too polished to beat a guy like Turman. Turman just doesn't have enough for him. This is what Sam Alvey's been doing his entire career, stopping takedowns and knocking people out. And I just don't think it's going to be any different this time.
I honestly think that the reason the line is as close as it is because Sam Alvey got submitted his last fight. And so people are like, oh, maybe he could get submitted again. But Sam Alvey, prior to that, I think had been submitted like once in 50 MMA fights. And it was against Gerald Meerschaert, who we'll talk about later. But Gerald Meerschaert submitted him, and then he beat him in a rematch. So it's like, I don't know. Like, Sam Alvey doesn't really get submitted, and he basically got knocked out by Marquez and then choked as a formality. But I really think that Sam Alvey, tremendously underrated for his grappling and wrestling ability. It just, you never see it because it doesn't happen. He just never lets people get him down. And when he does get down, he's right back up. I've been impressed with rewatching the tape on Alvey, his wrestling game. Paul, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, you guys kind of stole away a whole bunch of my points. I'm in on Sam Alvey inside the distance plus 275 as well. I think that Turman's striking game, like, he just kind of barges forward. He's a pressure fighter when he's on the feet, and then he's just going to run into that straight left from Sam Alvey. It will be frustrating when you have money on Sam Alvey, when he's just backed up against the cage doing nothing, kind of taking a couple shots on the chin, but eventually he lands the big one. And last time I felt like this good about Sam Alvey getting the job done. Sorry, there's a car driving by there. Last time I felt this good about it was when he took on Marcin Prachnio. It was all the same type of things. It was somebody who was fighting a pressure style. Prachnio's changed his style a little bit since that fight, but, barge forward, chin high type of striking game. And he just ran right into the punch. That's kind of what I see on the feet between them. And you guys kind of talked about Wellington Turman. He's a wrestler, but he's not a particularly great wrestler. Alvey's been stopping takedowns from guys like this for years. So I think Alvey gets the job by knockout. But the difference between by knockout is like 3-1 right now, plus 275. It's like it protects you if there's like a club and sub type of situation. So that's the route I went.
Which we have seen one time before from Sam Alvey in the UFC. So I think that that's a very good shot there, Paul. And yeah, man, I'm totally with you. I think that this is a good spot for him. And that Marcin Prachnio knockout is comical because Marcin literally gets knocked down and goes, "Oh, I'll have it again then, please," and walks right back onto the same exact punch twice in a row. I was like, come on, Marcin, come on. Didn't have any money on that fight, but I just thought it was funny, man. I think that Sam Alvey got a special lead hand. You know, I like those guys who fight off a lead hand. I think it gives guys problems. I think it's a tricky look for people that aren't used to it. And Wellington Turman's had problems with everybody he's struck with in the UFC. So I don't think that he'll have any different time with Sam Alvey. You know, he might be able to land a little bit more, but as long as Sam Alvey's durability holds, I think that Sam Alvey should be able to out kickbox him pretty fundamentally. Al, how do you feel? Sorry.
Yeah, honestly, like I'll never, ever, ever place another bet on Sam Alvey again. And he's definitely on my shit list. And one of the most running the numbers through with these guys, Sam Alvey, if you've bet on his opponent to win inside the distance on every single fight since 2018, so in his last 8 fights, and also adding in betting on Wellington Turman's opponent since his 2019 debut in the UFC. If you've bet all of their opponents in that stretch on the inside the distance prop, you're up over $1,600. These guys are just getting finished machines, and especially against guys who are, coming in as decently priced favorites. Like, you're not paying a huge price on either of these guys' opponents. Like, Julian Marquez, he wasn't a huge favorite. So yeah, I honestly think, and I never like to say lock, but the under 2.5 rounds in this fight, and the fight goes to distance, no, in this fight is just like, I keep scratching my eyes. Like, I keep being like, is this correct? Because I can't see this fight going more than 7.5 minutes, and they're giving us 12.5 minutes. I don't understand the total. I know, Alvey has gone the distance in 4 of his last 8, but still not against Turman. And Sam Alvey, this is a factor I haven't heard much. Sam Alvey's back is against the wall here. He loses this fight, he's gone. Even if he wins this fight, he's gone. If he wins this fight by decision, he might be gone. He needs a stoppage here. You could probably say the same thing about Wellington Turman. So this is a straight up loser leaves town match. Macho Man versus the Ultimate Warrior, full on. Whoever loses this fight is gone. And if this fight goes the distance, they might both be gone. So honestly, fight goes to distance, no, and under 2.5 rounds, sign me up all day, because I think I'm very hesitant to say, free money or a lock, but I can't see this one going the distance. Both these guys are going to come out desperate. So yeah, I'm all over the under on this one.
I think that I couldn't agree more, and I'm actually going to go ahead and just endorse outright the fight does not go to decision. I am on I am on betonline.ag, and Sam Alvey money line is plus 110. Wellington Turman money line is minus 130. But guys, the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 135. Probably going to be in for 3 units. I did not see that was the price on that. That's outrageous to me. I think that fight should be minus 250. This fight is a fight that I see either fighter winning inside the distance as like 85% of their win equity. So it's just like, I'm with Al Mac here 100%. And that's a fight that I'm going to be having a fairly decent sized wager on, I would think, because I also think that covers my ass. If Sam Alvey looks like shit, the one thing that Narco brought up that I thought was valid in the comments was that, Alvey's chin probably looked a little worse at 85 than it did at 205, potentially because of the weight cut. And that would be my only concern here, but that just bolsters the point that Al Mac is making, that, if we're starting to see a dip in the durability of Alvey, that's all the more reason that this fight doesn't go to decision, whether Turman finishes by submission or not. If Alvey gets hurt, that might be the way that he gets submitted like it was last time. So I think that that's just an interesting look. And I think that that's a short price. I think I would be stunned if that doesn't close minus 165 or greater. And that's how I feel about that. So we can move right along. We've got a 185-pound matchup. I know me and Al Mac were discussing that there's been a lot of middleweight fights on this card, and middleweight is a division that I actually have been profitable in. Knock on wood, we can keep the trend going. But we've got another good fight here. Abdul Razak Al Hassan, Alessio Di Chirico. And, I feel like Alessio Di Chirico, one of the more underrated middleweights in the UFC, been to split decisions with like very talented guys, and I kind of thought he should have won some of those fights. Granted, like the Zach Cummings fight, he was probably winning right down to the wire, and he got hurt at the end and lost the fight. But, this is a guy who has basically just been on a run of bad luck in a lot of ways. It's not like he was a bad fighter. I think in part, though, I will talk about what Weezy has mentioned before, which is somebody that doesn't always fight with the best IQ. I think that criticism is valid because he doesn't always press his advantages, even when he looks like the better fighter, Alessio Di Chirico. But we saw that last time out, is a little more aggressive, was able to put a hard shot on Buckley, and, man, didn't really maximize his media opportunities, but I feel like the UFC is trying to give Abdul Razak Al Hassan the door with this matchup. And that's the way that I'm looking at this right now. Weezy, how do you feel about this? Tell me I'm crazy.
No, man, you're not crazy, dude. I've lost money on Abdul Razak Al Hassan the last 3 times out. It's easy to bet on power. The power is the thing that jumps off the page at anybody. When you watch highlights, it's the power that you see over and over and over again, the spectacularity, the knockouts. And Al Hassan has that. I mean, guy's got 10 career wins. They're all by knockout. They're all in the first round. The guy's dangerous, But the problem is that he's a welterweight. He's not a middleweight. And then he had this long layoff. He came back a different person, unable to make welterweight. This guy's 35 years old now, too. So he's not getting any younger. He's up a weight class. His only win equity is getting a knockout in the first round, and Di Chirico's tough as nails, So this just looks awful for Abdul Razak Al Hassan. I got this as my ass shaving of the week. I think Di Chirico is going to put it on this dude straight up. This guy just doesn't look to me like he has anything left. And I really feel for Abdul Razak Al Hassan. What he went through is something that nobody should have to go through. It's fucking awful. But here he is, and this is not the kind of sport where we get warm, fuzzy tales of comebacks after adversity.
Ask Walt Harris, man.
Yeah, well, I was just about to bring up the Walt Harris story. When bad things happen, it takes something out of your gas tank as a human being, not just as a fighter. And when you step into the cage and get into the cage with these killers, you need to be mentally clear. You need to be physically strong. You need to take every part of your training seriously. And when you miss weight like this guy did twice in a row at welterweight, and then you move up 15 pounds, and then you have trouble making weight at 185, and then get ragdolled by Jacob Malkoun, I'm sorry, I'm done. He's going to get his ass shaved. Alessio Di Chirico, I got 2.5 units on the money line. I think he gets it done inside the distance. I think this is going to be one-way traffic. I think this is Abdul Razak's last UFC fight.
Excuse me, I had myself muted there. I was about to say, with conviction, Uncle Weezy comes down on the side against Abdul Razak Al Hassan. He's with me. He thinks he's probably not long for this organization, unfortunately. Paul, how do you feel, my man? Does Abdul have a chance?
No, he's first round or bust, as Weezy and you were alluding
Quintessential.
to. That's really the name of his game. The guy's got murderous power puncher, but he's taking on a guy who's never been knocked out. So tough scene all the way around for him. Di Chirico super tough. And frankly, maybe I'm a little bit crazy. Didn't we already see this fight? We saw this fight when Olawale Bengbase took on Alessio Di Chirico back in 2017. Same type of stylistic matchup. You're taking
even
on
Buckley, even the Buckley fight.
Yep.
Buckley's just a bigger, stronger version of Al Hassan.
Yep. I don't have any money on the money line yet, but like what I'm thinking is, job on the line. It's going to be a type of situation where Abdul Razak Al Hassan comes out swinging. I'll be watching this fight very, very close in the live betting windows and hopefully snag up a better price on Alessio Di Chirico, who likes to take his time, likes to find his range. But I think his chin checks out. I mean, the losses that he has on his career, he's fighting some like at least top 15 guys at 185 pounds. That is not what Abdul Razak Al Hassan is whatsoever. Maybe he had before his, the legal problems, which were complete nonsense. It got thrown out. Maybe he had like that type of trajectory, but he hasn't looked the same since. That fight against Makhmud it was almost like he was like scared to like empty the tank. And by doing so, he lost like all of his greatest components of his game. He's a murderous power puncher. He's got to go out there. He's got to just try to kill him in the first round, or Di Chirico's going to take over in rounds 2 and 3. I wouldn't be shocked to see Abdul Razak Al Hassan win the first round, maybe even hurt him a little bit. But if we get to the betting window after round 1, you best believe I'm laying the wood on Alessio Di Chirico.
I think that's a very solid spot. And man, if I'm honest, the only reason I haven't played the money line on Di Chirico yet is that I was waiting on if I'm going to parlay him with somebody else or if I'm going to play him straight because I want to have a pretty substantial exposure to him. I think he is a better fighter broadly, and I think that the current version of Abdul Razak is just a shell of his former self, unfortunately. And, I appreciate you guys bringing up that point because it's easy to overlook that these fighters are human beings sometimes. We look at them like stocks and commodities because we're trying to make money here. But at the end of the day, it's a person that's been dealing with a lot of bullshit, and he's 36 years old. So, he's just like a little longer in the tooth, dealing with a bunch of crap on the outside, probably hadn't been too committed to his training, already had holes in his game, and now it's probably too late to fill them in. So it's like, all right, I just have to go out there with what I have, and he's probably going to go balls to the wall. I thought that the under in this spot might be a look. The only problem is that Alessio's not like a big finisher, but I really think that Abdul is kind of checking out, and I think that Alessio is, if there's one adjustment I saw in that last fight, it's that he looks like he's fighting as though he doesn't want the judges to be involved as much anymore. I think that might be something that I'm looking at as Alessio's coming out party, get him 2 big knockouts in a row, feed him a guy who's not really anxious to be in there. And I think that Barboza call is a great analog to this fight. In terms of how we could see it play out, Alessio is a good counter striker. He could definitely clip him when he's trying to do that big blitz early. So something to note. Al Mac, how do you feel?
Yeah, I feel like this is that's similar to the Justin Jacoby fight in a sense that, the last fight, the Justin Jacoby fight, you had like plus 300 on the fight to go the distance. Now, in his fight on Saturday, it's like minus 150 to go the distance. Very similar thing here. In Al Hassan's fight against Makhmud, it was like plus 400 to go the distance. And now he's coming in against Di Chirico here. And I was stunned by this. The over 2.5 is at a chalk minus 105. And I got to say, that the under is the play here. I haven't personally bet it yet, but this is the reason why this line is the way that it is. So you look at Chirico, you look at Al Hassan, he lost to Makhmud. Makhmud cashed at like plus 850 to win by decision. And then his next fight was against Akhmedov, cashes plus 560, and then against Lazez, I got the order mixed up, but Lazez cashed at plus 850 to win by decision. So between Makhmud, Lazez, and Akhmedov, he's lost by decision 3 times. 15.8 units you've been up if you bet on his opponent to win by decision in every single fight he's been in the UFC. You look at this fight, I think similar to what I just said about Sam Alvey, Wellington, Turman, I think that path is completely out for Al Hassan here. He's not going to sit back. He needs to win this fight. He needs to win inside the distance. And Chirico, his job isn't on the line here, but this is a really good spot for him to turn his career around. I think he's like 5-4 in his last 9. I think that he can really use Al Hassan as a springboard. And yeah, I think Chirico here, solid spot. But I got to say, like, I don't think this fight's going to last 12 and a half minutes. And at the current line, I haven't bet it, but like, if you're a value better, I got to advocate for taking a look at the under here, because it's just, people expect fireworks, and most of the time I like to fade those spots, but this is just the bookies are zigging, and I'm going to zag because I think the bookies are expecting this one to be another snooze fest similar to the Malkoun fight, where it just goes 15 minutes and he gets dominated. And I think Chirico is going to do similar to what he did to Buckley. And the under 2.5 rounds, I'm going to bet it like as soon as I'm done talking, because that's it's a solid look. I do not think this fight goes the distance. Another play where I'm hesitant to call it a lock, but I feel like I'm missing something here. With the bookies, favoring this fight to even go 3 rounds, I got to go with the other side here. I think the under solid spot.
I love it, Al Mac. I always like to joke that I never use the word lock unless I'm talking about my friend Manpreet. But I do believe that, this is a really good spot. I think it's a high percentage outcome. I will just note for everybody that betonline.ag is hanging the under at -125. They are hanging the does not go to decision -130. So I would be taking the doesn't go to decision. I would be playing that for to win a unit. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play that to win a unit. So I think that that's a good spot, and that's how I'm going to look to target this from a betting perspective. Also considering Chirico in parlays, also considering Chirico money line. I think that he's a spot here. Probably not going to bet him inside the distance. I feel like people have already gotten hip to that spot. It's +175. I don't think there's tremendous value there. So I'm going to be playing fight doesn't go. I'm probably going to be playing Chirico. The question is, do I play him straight? Do I play him in a parlay? I will let you guys know. That is why you got to follow me on Twitter at Liam Picks Fights. I will drop all my full plays before the event gets rolling on Saturday. Moving right along, folks, we got another matchup in the middleweight division. No surprise there. Gerald Meerschaert III, Makhmud Muradov, biggest favorite on the card by a country mile. Or actually, I shouldn't even say that. Not by a country mile. There's another middleweight fight with huge odds. But, pretty darn big odds in my opinion. Makhmud Muradov, a massive favorite. The market has started to contract. I think he went out as far as -800 on some books. And now we are seeing the current return is sitting at -700 on Makhmud Muradov and +450 coming back on Gerald Meerschaert. I will kick it to you first, Weezy. How do you feel about this middleweight matchup? I know a lot of people have takes with conviction.
Yeah, great fight here, you guys. This is one that screams violence for me. I'll give you the finish numbers on these cats, and they got a lot of fights, man. Muradov, 31 fights. He's 25-6. Guy's got an 80% finish rate as a pro. So 20 out of those 25 wins finished inside the distance. And then Meerschaert, dude's got a 94% finish rate in 32 wins. That's crazy. I mean, that is, what is that, 31 out of 32 or maybe 30. I think it's 30 out of 32 if my math is correct. But I mean, this guy is finishing everybody that he beats, So, and then we also look on the losses, because that's even more important in my opinion, because you could have 2 great finishers, but if they're both the kind of guy where you need to hit him in the head with a frying pan to get him out of there, it doesn't do you much good. But look, Meerschaert, 78% of his losses, of his 14 losses, coming inside the distance. And then you got Muradov. He's only got 6 losses. 4 of them come inside the distance. So whoever loses this fight is probably going to get finished inside the distance. If we talk about striking, this guy Muradov is so goddamn good. His feet, I mean, his footwork, the way that he moves, he's constantly moving laterally. When he throws one strike, he's right back out. He's always cutting angles. He's always moving his feet. If you're a boxing fan, watch Muradov's feet. The guy is the closest thing to a prize fighter boxer, maybe next to Max Holloway or Calvin Kattar, that we got right now, purely in the UFC. This guy is so good on the feet. He glides. So, and then also we see that Muradov is 100% takedown defense thus far in the UFC. He's defended 5 takedowns, but when you watch his regional scene footage, this guy's getting takedowns in his own right. He took down Alberto Uda, who's a real good jiu-jitsu player, and stayed on top of him for a little while. I think he should be able to. It's because his footwork is so good that I don't see Meerschaert taking him down. And if Meerschaert doesn't take him down, it's just a matter of time before Muradov knocks him out. 21% of Meerschaert's losses coming by way of knockout, and 68% of Muradov's wins coming by way of knockout. So I do see Makhmud getting this done inside the distance by knockout. He's a big favorite for a reason. I'd be shocked if Meerschaert pulled this off, but if he does, it'll be with a submission inside the distance. So no matter which way you're looking, I believe the fight doesn't go to decision. We'll cover both of it. It's juiced to hell because of these finish numbers. However, it's a great parlay piece. So I like Muradov to win inside the distance, but you could also bet the fight doesn't go to decision if you don't have that, nice of a feel on it. And then you also look at it this way. Muradov, minus 550? Fight doesn't go, maybe minus 300. A lot more value there, and it covers the Meerschaert sub.
Yeah, and I'm seeing fight doesn't go at minus 230 on
that's not bad.
So not a terrible look. I think that there's a lot of merit to what you're saying there, Weezy. And man, I couldn't agree more in the sense that both of these guys are, finishable. It's harder to find the tape of Muradov's losses. I think I was able to see one of them. He's gotten submitted, I think, 3 times in his losses. So by guillotine chokes, that's the way he tends to lose. And I think it's in part because if you ever watch his fights and he does get clipped, he does get dinged, he gets hurt by something briefly on the feet, he'll just reactively go for a takedown because he's pretty good at them. And I do think that sometimes against a higher level grappler, you could just get yourself caught in a guillotine that you then can't get back out of. And I think that that's what happened to him, if I'm remembering the tape correctly. But, man, I think that this is an interesting fight. Paul, give us your take, brother.
I mean, it's not even competitive on the feet. Like, Muradov is just going to dance around Gerald Meerschaert. Meerschaert's wrestling isn't really all that elite. The size between the two of them, Meerschaert's usually a pretty big middleweight. I'm expecting them to be maybe Gerald's a little bit thicker than him, but they're, it's like 6'2", 6'1". They're around the same size. It's a tough out for Gerald here. I struggle to see how he gets it to the mat. I think on the outside, he's going to get absolutely picked apart. It's just a matter of how long his chin holds up before he's rendered unconscious. And I don't know what happened to, I didn't even go back and watch Muradov's the guy hasn't lost in this is 15 fight winning streak right now. Something happened in 2016 because the guy completely turned it around, and frankly now he's probably a top 10 guy in the middleweight division in the world. Like, the guy's skills are for real. It looks like he's got skills everywhere. And yeah, as Weezy was talking about, the guy's boxing is on he's probably got the best boxing in the middleweight division at the very least in MMA. So I think he rolls inside the distance. The minus 230 is probably a pretty decent parlay piece. Obviously, the money line has gotten away from us at this point, though. But when Gerald wins, he wins by sub relatively early. When he loses, he gets knocked the fuck out. So, Muradov by knockout, how I see this one shaking out.
I think that the obvious pick here is Muradov by knockout, and I think that there's a lot of merit to that take. Narco is pointing out in the comment section, best boxing managed by the money team. Oh, that's true. I think that this is a setup fight for him. But with all those things being said, I do just want to give a little credence to the other side and note that, Alessio de Chirico did take Muradov to decision, and I would rate his durability and his striking to be better, his movement to be better. But what I will say is that Gerald is kind of weird about how he gets fights to the ground. It's like he's one of the guys, I think we talked about it before. It doesn't need to be a takedown. It could be a guard pull. And Gerald has done that to more than one guy in the UFC with some good results. We also talked about the fact that Muradov sometimes wrestles, instinctually. He's pretty good at that. I think that if he's doing that here, he's going to be in danger when he does it. GM3 is like actually a really dangerous grappler, even against good grapplers. That being said, he can get exploited by the best grapplers, right? Like GM3 is not Jacare. He's not like a world-class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt that's going to go win the Mundials and the ADCCs, but he is a credible, submission threat in the UFC. And when somebody doesn't get him out of there early, I think that's where Gerald gets caught. It's like before he gets into a fight, if you touch him on the chin, Gerald will go away. But Muradov has been more patient. He's not one of those guys that rushes forward and pressures you. Honestly, like Heinisch was doing, and like you saw from Andrew Sanchez. So I think that it's more likely that Muradov finishes him a little bit down the stretch here. I do think that the inside the distance is a good look, but I think everybody assuming that because Meerschaert's gotten knocked out in the first round, recently, that he's going to definitely get knocked out again in the first round. I don't think that that's fair. I do think that Meerschaert continues to make some improvements. I think that guys sleep on him on the feet all the time, and then he lands like a really hard body kick, and they're like, fuck. What just happened? Like I've seen it in a few of his fights, watching back tape, where guys are surprised. Trevin Giles, chief among them, where he's having success boxing and feeling good and moving around, but then the body kicks from the outside start coming. And like you mentioned, GM3 is a pretty big guy, carries a lot of weight and size at the middleweight division, and I think it could be interesting. Muradov's got a good physique, but he doesn't have the thickest body in the world. I think a couple body kicks could affect his cardio. That's just something that I'm taking a look at here. I have an untracked play, half a unit at plus 550 on GM3. And I put it in just because I was like, this line is not going to hold. And it didn't. It's contracted back to plus 450. Paul had said, if you're trying to get on the Muradov side here, it's just like the money line has gotten away from you. That fight doesn't go to the decision, I think, is a better look because it covers both guys. And, what if GM3 just is around in the third round? I think then it's anybody's fight. I still favor Muradov, but I just think that Muradov hasn't proven that he's like a top 15 guy in my mind yet. I even went back and looked at some of his regional fight. He's good, but he just hasn't fought the best level of competition, even in the UFC. Who the hell is that Trevor Smith guy or whoever that he knocked out? I've never heard of that guy before or since. So it's like, I'm not completely sold, but I do think Muradov is the side here. Al, how do you feel?
Yeah, just to continue your point, I feel like you look at Muradov, he comes in with a 3-0 record in the UFC, 2 wins by stoppage, but with all 3 of those fights, they went over the betting total. Both of his stoppage wins came in the third round. So if he lets Meerschaert hang around, I think he might be in some trouble. But obviously, I think that he knows that, his team knows that, and is probably going to come out and try to Hamzat Chimaev, Gerald Meerschaert, and get this fight done in 45 seconds. And because of that, fight goes the distance is probably the parlay piece of the week here, because I would be stunned, absolutely, do a shoey type stunned if this fight goes the distance. I cannot envision this fight going the distance, and I know that he went the distance with the Chirico, but again, styles make fights, and I just, it's uncomparable, just the two matchups there. I do feel like, though, if
Chirico doesn't get knocked out.
Yeah, and I do feel, though, if Muradov does let Meerschaert hang around, it's pretty simple. Honestly, I feel like the more this fight goes, the more it swings slightly in the favor of Meerschaert, and it just, raises that potential that he gets caught in something. And I haven't bet it, but honestly, I might take a look at Meerschaert here at that big plus spot. But I don't know. It's tough to say, but I feel like the under 1.5 rounds at plus money, because I think Muradov is wise to what I just said. He can't let Meerschaert hang around, and if he does, the fight can get away from him. So I feel like he's going to try to close this fight out early. I like under 1.5 rounds quite a bit in this fight. And that fight goes the distance. No, parlay it up, because that's right at the top of the list. Because like I said, I do not see this fight going the distance at all.
I'm with you, Al Mac. I could say, boys, we better get some damn violence this Saturday night, because a lot of my wagers are predicated on people getting out there, as I like to say, chins up, hands down, let them fly, and go have fun out there. But let's get to the violence early and often. Right along the card, boys, this is by and large the lowest level fight that the UFC's put on in some time, in the male divisions, I should say. We got Andre Petroski and Michael Gillmore, 5-1 versus 6-3. Really limited pro sample size for these guys. Coming off the Ultimate Fighter, Petroski kind of a big deal coming into the show and had mixed results on the show. I can't tell you any storylines that happened on the Ultimate Fighter. I did not watch the program live this year, but what I did do is I went back and I did watch all the fights. So I got a gauge of who these guys are and how they fight. But man, I have to say, Petroski strikes me as a clear favorite here for a number of reasons. The physicality seems like a huge difference. He seems like he has a process for winning fights that makes a lot more sense. What I've seen a lot from Gillmore is that he likes to come out there, wing naked, hard leg kicks at distance, and then try and put punches behind it. That is like the level of MMA that he's doing. It doesn't seem like a very complex game. It doesn't seem like he has a tremendous amount to offer. Been submitted several times. I feel like that's probably what we're going to see here. That's been the take of like everyone in the community. That line is probably absolutely steamed. I know that right now the money line for this fight is sitting -600 for Petroski, +400 for Gillmore. And most people that I've heard discuss this fight feel it will end in the first round by submission. And I can't say that I will disagree. Weezy, how do you feel about this fight?
Yeah, this has all the makings of a serious ass shaving here. I mean, how does this not wind up being a submission in the first round? Michael Gillmore, 3 professional losses, all of them by submission. And then you got a guy in Petroski who
all in the first round as well.
Oh God, man.
Sorry.
I mean, it's just screaming ass shaving here. I mean, and then Petroski's a really good wrestler. The guy gets on top, even the fight that he lost against Battle, he took Battle down like 4 times, was grinding him out. It really wasn't until Battle got up the 4th time that he landed some big shots. But I'm a little bit worried about Petroski's conditioning here. In the house, when he fought Brian Battle kneed him right in the face, and Petroski pulled away and said it was a headbutt. Brian Battle's head was nowhere near Petroski. It was really weird. And they went and they did a replay on it, gave Petroski a 1.5 minutes to rest. And then he used that rest to go back to his wrestling in the first round. He dominated the first round against Battle, but then I think he just kind of gassed out a little bit. Offensive wrestling is exhausting. But, I mean, it just seems like this is a tailor-made opponent for Petroski to go out there, get a quick win, show his wrestling, show his jiu-jitsu, show his submission game, show his top control. This should be real easy. Don't overthink it. Petroski, first-round submission.
I love it, Weezy. I love it, and I'm right there with you. Paul, how do you feel about this one? I'm going to plug in my laptop charger so the show doesn't cut out on us.
All right. I mean, Petroski's manager deserves a raise, because Gillmore is probably the worst UFC fighter I've ever seen in my life. And the fact that he was able to get himself onto this card, that Petroski was able to get a fight with the guy who got absolutely starched by Urbina. And then you go through like the rest of his like regional scene fights. He's fighting losing fighters, and he's not necessarily even winning against a bunch of these guys. Like anytime he's ever faced anybody, even with a modicum of talent, he's getting starts. Like, I guess good for him. He's 34 years old. He was never going to get this opportunity. I don't see anything to like about the gentleman, Michael Gillmore. He's this is probably a one and done.
It's a great nickname, though, Paul. You'll admit that.
It is. I mean, but you don't want to be a gentleman when you're a cage fighter, right? It's like I mean, he really fights to that nickname for sure. So this guy's pretty harmless in there. Petroski's manager, as I said, deserves a massive raise. Got him the easiest fight he could ever ask for. I'm not big on Petroski moving forward, but he absolutely rolls here. Money line is obviously super stretched out, super wide, but I think it should be. I think it's probably about right. It's kind of like a banana peel type of situation. If Petroski injures himself or gasses out by just chasing the finish too much early and isn't able to do it, which I think he will be able to do it, maybe just maybe the gentleman comes back and secures a win. But Petroski should absolutely just impale this dude.
And let me say something here real quick. If Gerald Meerschaert, if you're listening, fire your fucking manager, because you've had Kamaev and Muradov in 2 out of your last 3 fights, and you need to go introduce yourself to this gentleman Petroski and ask him who's getting him his fights, because your manager sucks, dude.
It's true, 100%.
Totally a fair point there by Weezy, and yeah, I think that's a lot of fair points raised by Paul as well. There isn't a ton to like on the other side. It seems like a fight where it's like it's in one guy's hand how this turns out. If Petroski does what we think he's going to do, which is come out there, be aggressive, shoot takedowns, he's probably going to elevate him, slam him, take his back, and submit him shortly thereafter. The problem is, the bookies are kind of wise to it. A lot of the spots that you'd want to target here have already been hit. But Al Mac, you have been a detective for us on this card. Is there anything that you see in the numbers where you might be able to spot a trend?
Not really. Honestly, like the middleweight division is one of my least favorite divisions in the UFC, just as far as being able to look at it on the surface and find a spot. I'm not overly impressed with Petroski here, but I do understand obviously why he's such a big favorite. Like Paul said, Michael Gillmore is up there with CM Punk and Mike Jackson as far as their UFC caliber. So I understand why Petroski is such a huge favorite here, but he's coming off the heels of a bunch of fights ending by stoppage. He's got a stoppage loss in LFA to Aaron Jeffrey, but then 4 straight stoppage wins before that. I think bettors are looking at that, thinking that this guy's going to get his work done easily. But again, we're talking about lower level competition here, and I think you could obviously make an argument that this is definitely the biggest fight of Petroski's life, right? So if I had a free play, I would say that if you can get plus money at fight starts round 2, I just feel like I don't know. I always look for these types of spots where there's a huge favorite and the unders on the chalk side. I still feel like that Petroski, a whole bunch of intangibles could happen here. Obviously, I'm not overly confident in it, but if you had to force my hand, if you gave me a free pick, I had to bet on every single fight on the card. I like this fight. If you could get fight starts round 2 at plus money, I see it at some books -115. I wouldn't be interested in that, but fight starts round 2. I feel like there might be a chance that Gillmore can get out of this, just because, like Weezy said, Petroski's conditioning, right? He might. If Gillmore is able to nullify him at all and it gets through the halfway point of this fight, the halfway point of the first round, Petroski might play it smart and be like, okay, I'm gonna hold back here, get out of the round, and then come out firing to start the second. Because, like I said, it's the biggest fight of Petroski's young career. Like he only has 6 fights. This is definitely the biggest fight of his life. So he's going to want to be polished. So I wouldn't be shocked that this fight goes, if it hits the second round, based on the value. I think that might be where it lies, as long as you were getting plus money. But other than that, it's a pass for me.
Absolutely. And I will not belabor this point. It is one of the lowest level fights on the card. So we can move right along. Although I'll be honest, I feel like all the tough fights are, lower level than the average UFC fights, right? Like if you look at some of these guys, they don't even strike me as like contender series levels guys, all of these. Some of these guys have very little pro experience, no wins over people with wins like one win over somebody that has a pro MMA win, like going into the show. And I feel like that's just like very low level MMA compared to what you normally see in the UFC. And so granted, they get some seasoning by going through the Ultimate Fighter, by being around a bunch of other people, by training with high level pros. But man, just seems like they're like taking very low level guys for the show now. And I think that that's going to stand out in some of the other fights that we look at as well. Petroski and, the gentleman, not very good fighters. And Petroski was like the top pick on one of the teams. So it's like that for me just doesn't speak very highly to the talent on the show. Although I will say Petroski, I do think is also the better striker. So
yeah, it's like Bellator prelims level of MMA, basically.
Man, it really feels like it. It should be a fight pass prelim in my opinion. But either way, we move on to what is not a fight pass prelim, what is a very credible main card fight. And I could go ahead and say this is the people's main event as far as I'm concerned. We got Kevin Lee, Daniel Rodriguez, never lost a prison fight, Daniel Rodriguez, and the Motown Phenom, right? Everybody's favorite fighter. Whew! This is a good one, boys. 170 pounds. Kevin Lee hasn't had many easy breaks. He's fought a lot of tough competition in the UFC, man. That's what was standing out to me when I was looking back at his run. But he's also, taken a couple on the chin in the UFC and lost some fights the same way. The Ali Aquinta fight stands out, had some time elapsed between the two and couldn't solve those riddles. And we've also seen, Kevin Lee can lose a fight the same way, which is dominate early, start to get tired, put himself in a submission hold, and then, do the half tap and what happened. So I feel like this is an interesting fight, man. I think that, I'm seeing a lot of people with confidence one way or the other, and that's something that I don't have on this fight. I feel like this fight is a lot of unknowns in my mind. For that reason, I would probably be leaning towards a dog or pass. In my own mind right now, I'm not interested in betting Kevin Lee at a minus 150. But, Weezy, I'm going to kick it to you first, man. Maybe you see it differently. What do you think?
Oh, such a good fight, man. This is the highest level fight on the card, in my opinion. That's not the main event, but even probably higher than the main event. Coming from the lowest level to the highest level here. This is so good. I did a balls deep breakdown on my channel with my guy Monk, who's in the chat here, and we went like an hour and 15
Shout out
minutes.
Monk.
Yeah, man, we went like an hour and 15 minutes into this fight, dude. And I'll break it down as quickly as I can. I see some nice measurables advantages here actually for Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee's 6 years younger than Daniel Rodriguez, and Kevin Lee surprisingly has a 3-inch reach advantage here. So even though Rodriguez is the natural welterweight, he's going to be the bigger guy, the taller guy, the stronger guy. Kevin Lee's not in the statistically significant measurable categories, which are age and reach. He's got an advantage. So I think one of those narratives that's going on all week is that Daniel Rodriguez is the natural welterweight. Lee's moving up in size here, that he's going to probably be much smaller, but that may not be the case. But what's really interesting here is we look at the control time percentages for both fights. And when we see those control time percentages, that's when we're going to see the clash of styles that's happening in this fight. Daniel Rodriguez has been spending about 90% of his fights at distance striking, right? While Kevin Lee, it's about 49% that's at distance striking. So we got one guy here who wants to get the fight to the cage, to the mat, and another guy who wants to dance and box. So we have to kind of try to figure out which one of these guys is going to get their way. Daniel Rodriguez has got nice takedown defense that he's shown so far. He's successfully defended 15 of 18 takedowns against for 83.33% takedown defense. But we know Kevin Lee is a relentless wrestler. 43 of 99 on Kevin Lee's takedown attempts and 43.84% control time. So we're going to see Daniel Rodriguez tested in the wrestling and grappling like he's never been tested before in the UFC, because 90% of his UFC cage time is taking place at distance striking. So Kevin Lee's got a massive strength to schedule advantage. His last 5 fights were Charles Oliveira, Gregor Gillespie, Rafael Dos Anjos, Al Iaquinta, and Edson Barboza, and he won 2 of those fights. That's like the kind of, you go 0-5 when you run up against names like that. So then you look at Daniel Rodriguez in the last 5 are Preston Parsons, Mike Perry, Nicholas Dalby, Dwight Grant, Gabe Green. So I see a big strength to schedule advantage here for Lee. I see a big wrestling advantage here for Lee. And I actually see some interesting measurables advantages here for Lee. Lee's the more experienced mixed martial artist. But if this fight takes place at range, we're looking at a guy in Daniel Rodriguez who's throwing 16.54 significant strikes per minute compared to 9.31 for Lee. So yeah, if this fight stays standing, you got to like Rodriguez, although Lee's a better striker than people think he is. And if it gets to the grappling, you got to like Lee, but damn, Rodriguez has got really good takedown defense. It's a hard fight to call. It's two really good, well-rounded mixed martial artists. A lot of people forget that D-Rod, because he's such a good boxer, they forget that he's a 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Eddie Bravo. I mean, he keeps that jiu-jitsu in his back pocket, never uses it. So, well, he got that choke against Means, which was a great win, great way to kick off his UFC career. I'm actually picking Kevin Lee here. I think he can win this fight with his wrestling and his conditioning. 3-round fights are when I really like Kevin Lee. I don't have to worry about him, that offensively heavy style of wrestling, gassing him out in the 4th and the 5th. I'm going to pick Kevin Lee by decision here. Not a ton of confidence, but I'm a big Lee fan, and I think he gets the job done here.
I hear you for sure. Paul, how do you feel?
Lee's a super talented guy. I've got a few questions about him coming into this fight. One, he was supposed to fight Sean Brady back in July on the UFC 264 card. Pulled out due to a rib injury. This guy's already had bad conditioning in the past. He's struggled. A lot of that may have to do with cutting down to 185 pounds. It's kind of like an intangible of this entire situation. Maybe going up to 170, that's going to help his cardio a little bit. But I mean, if you ever had, I'm sure anybody here's ever had like a broken rib or some sort of serious, like, intercostal, I don't know, I'm not a doctor. Those muscles along your ribs, like, you're just bedridden. Like, you're not working on that cardio. You're not going out for a run. Like, you basically just, the only way to heal any of that shit is just to hang out in bed and wait for it to heal before you can actually get up and get back to business. You would know as a wrestler back in your day, Liam, I'm sure. Like, you're not grinding in the wrestling room if you got a rib injury.
Funny enough, Paul, if you had asked me this 6 months ago, I would have been like, I don't know what the hell this guy's talking about. But I was going with a couple of college guys wrestling over the summer. I was coaching wrestling as well. And I turned in when somebody was going for a half Nelson and felt like a 3-way pop in my rib. And 3 weeks, I couldn't go on the mat. So I know exactly what you're talking about, man. And it does not feel good. It doesn't feel natural when you start coming back either, I must say, because I still grapple and do jiu-jitsu now. But it took me, 2-3 weeks to reintegrate myself because my rib was messed up. And that's without the multiple opposite side ACL reconstructions that we've seen as well, which I just want to shout out Monk in the chat for saying so. And Mbe also mentioned that Daniel Rodriguez had that 10th Planet black belt. So shout out the chat. You guys are keeping us honest and always dropping interesting nuggets. Appreciate you guys. Al Mac, we'll kick it to you, brother.
So
unless you've given your finish.
No, I was just bringing you involved into it. So basically, like, moving up to 170 from 155, it's like, if your game plan is to wrestle, now you're trying to push along the bigger man, control the bigger man. I know that Kevin Lee he has a 3-inch reach advantage in this spot, which I was actually pretty surprised by. But it's 5'9" versus 6'1". Sure, his hips are going to be lower. He'll be able to get those takedowns, but rib injury, historical gassing issues, going up, trying to control a bigger man. 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, shouts to the guy in the chat. I was aware of that as well. 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu for D-Rod. Good takedown defense for D-Rod, and I think he's at least the more voluminous striker when it's on the feet. I think this is clearly dog or pass. I haven't jumped in on it yet, and my man Cody Safdie was touting Kevin Lee's praise, and I could totally see Kevin Lee, getting the takedown, staying out of trouble while they're on the mat the first 2 rounds and holding on for dear life in round 3. I don't think, by no means is it a lock, but I'm more drawn to the plus 130 I see out there on Daniel Rodriguez than I am to Kevin Lee.
That makes a lot of sense to me too, Paul, and I appreciate that take. Al Mac, do you feel the same way? You feel differently? I think we've got a little bit of a split now. We got me and Paul saying that we kind of give a little bit of credence to the Daniel Rodriguez side. We got Uncle Weezy saying the stats might back up a Kevin Lee play here. Anthropomorphic advantages on the Lee side, despite what people might be thinking. How do you feel?
Yeah, like, I mean, with all due respect to his strength of schedule, Kevin Lee is still 4-4 in his last 8, and 7 of those 8 not ending in the distance. So I feel like Kevin Lee's path to victory, his window here, in my opinion, is about the first half of this fight. And then I just think that he can't let Daniel Rodriguez hang around, especially like what Paul said about the conditioning and about that rib injury. If that ends up being a factor, we've seen Daniel Rodriguez is able to just pour it on. He's able to turn up that volume, and he's the type of guy who he kind of like excels in third rounds. Like when the fight is, I feel like, that Dalby fight apart, and he may have learned from that. But even in the Mike Perry fight, when the fight was his, basically, he was still turning it up in the third round. I just feel like Kevin Lee's path to victory here lies within, I think, like the first 8 minutes of this fight. Beyond that, I feel like it's Daniel Rodriguez's fight to win. The only issues I kind of weary about, I believe Rodriguez is coming in on semi-short notice here. So, but I know he's coming on like incredibly short notice before and got a win. So it's not the worst situation. But this is one of those fights where I feel like I got to go with the dog and the under. Because if Kevin Lee is able to, the under is at plus 115. I see it at some places. And then, you got Daniel Rodriguez at like plus 135 at Bet Online that I got it at. If Kevin Lee wins the fight within the first 7.5 minutes or in the first 12.5 minutes, you lose your Daniel Rodriguez bet, but you're still cash on the under. You walk away. If D-Rod ends up getting the finish, you cash on both. The only way you really lose is if Kevin Lee ends up a late round stoppage or a decision win. And just the way that I handicap it, I just feel like Kevin Lee's chance of victory here is early. And then the more the fight goes, I think it exponentially sways toward Daniel Rodriguez. But yeah, betting apart, I agree with Liam. This is the people's main event. This is the best fight on the card, in my opinion. Barboza and Chikadze is obviously a great fight, but just as like Kevin Lee came in as the betting favorite against Charles Oliveira in his last fight, who is now the lightweight champion. So this guy, he's just got a weird career. Like he's been so close to the pinnacle, and he's kind of just got to start from scratch here at welterweight. Because of that, I feel like he's going to try to come out flying, and I expect him either to win this fight inside the distance or D-Rod to win by decision. That's basically how I see this playing out.
Nice. Well, there you have it, folks. That is a very contentious fight. We got people lighting up the chat with strong opinions on that fight. Like I said, everybody's really engaged, really invested in that fight for obvious reasons. I think that there's reasons to back either guy, I think that the one thing that scares me about Kevin Lee is just that I know he has some advantages that he just doesn't always use as well as he should. Like that length and reach advantage. How are you getting jabbed to death by Ally Quinta? Like it's just certain things that bother me about the career of Kevin Lee, where I feel like based on his tools and his skills, he should be just having more success. And like, the fact that he doesn't, it's something that has baffled me for a long time. I'm rooting for Kevin Lee in some ways. I want him to have a good career. I want him to be on track, but I'm not seeing a ton of positives in terms of reasons to bet on Kevin Lee as a minus 150 favorite. But moving right along the card, guys, we are on to the tough finale, which, unless you were like really tuned into the UFC, I don't even know how you know this is going on. I follow this sport pretty closely, and this snuck up on me that the tough finale was happening. Like I said, I had to cram in all those fights because I hadn't watched anything from this season. So I'm interested to see how you guys shake out on the 135-pound tough final between Ricky Turcios and Brady Highstand. We'll kick it to Weezy first. How do you feel about this one, man? I feel like it's a little lower level than we're used to in the UFC. Maybe Turcios is ready, but the other guy just seems like not seasoned enough for a typical UFC fighter, but maybe I'm wrong.
And you might be wrong on this one, Liam. He's only got 6 fights and Turcios has 12. But one thing that really stuck out to me, Liam, was the wins that Brady got in the house. Josh Reddinghouse and the kid from Alpha Male. His name is the kid that had brain surgery. I forget his name.
Murdoch.
Yeah.
Those are good wins. Those are the 2 best wins of his career. And the Reddinghouse win in particular, this guy's a veteran. He's fought all over the world, Reddinghouse. He had 2 fights against Sergey Morozov. There's a great Reddinghouse-Morozov fight that took place in the Ural Mountains. And it's an outdoor arena, and you see the mountains in the background. It's a really beautiful place to have a fight. But anyway, I think Highstand's wrestling looks really good. And for him to beat guys like Reddinghouse and Murdoch in the house, I just think that he's taking that next step now. This is a guy who's got some good tools. He's got some good wrestling. We have to worry about whether his conditioning is going to hold up for 3 rounds, though, because we know offensive wrestling is very exhausting. And Turcios has shown excellent conditioning. So if he can kind of survive that first round, I think that, we're going to see Turcios kind of pick up the pace as the fight goes on. And Highstand maybe start to wilt a little bit if he doesn't get a finish early. I'm really having a hard time calling this fight, man. I think Brady's wrestling early is going to be a difference maker, probably win him the first round. I think if this fight goes to the 3rd round, you're going to see Turcios' experience advantage and conditioning advantage show that he'll probably win the 3rd. I have no idea who wins the 2nd. I'm excited to see this. I like Turcios. I think he's an interesting dude, likable guy. And for a 22-year-old and Brady Highstand to be stepping in here, potentially get a win the Ultimate Fighter with his whole life ahead of him, maybe at the age of 22, that'd be really cool to see too. So I'm picking Brady here because of the wrestling. I always tend to go with the wrestlers. But I could see Turcios getting a late finish if he wilts under the bright lights here. But I'd be interested to see how you guys are capping this one, because this is a tough one to call.
I would tend to agree with you there, Weezy. And, I think it's because Turcios, he's very hittable. That's the thing that stands out to me about him. Otherwise, I think he's a pretty decent fighter. He's got good rangy kicks. He can keep somebody off of him. He can answer when somebody takes him down. He's got a solid enough game off his back. He looks to get back up. He seems coachable enough. I think there's some things to like about Turcios, but he's been off switch before by Martinez, who we talked about earlier. And we just see him get hit a lot. He walks into shots a lot, likes to have that bravado, machismo type of deal going on when he's fighting. And that's something that bothers me about fighters. It's something I don't like to back when somebody, it's just like Wellington Turman pointing at the chin. It works until it doesn't work and somebody cracks you. So that's the kind of thing that scares me about Turcios. I feel like his aggression and yelling and the styling sometimes distracts him from the job at hand. Paul, how do you feel about this?
I was pretty impressed by what I saw from Highstand on his Contender Series fights. Just his entries to his takedowns, they looked super, super quick. He got to the hips. Technique looked super solid. I'm the diehard Habib can do no wrong guy. So I just kind of appreciated what I saw from him. Obviously, he's young in his career. His regional scene fights, leave a lot to be desired in terms of he's fighting absolute nobodies and then loses to a guy who's 9-5 and then follows that up with a win that's over 1-12. So it's all of those earlier fights in his career you got to kind of throw out. But yeah, Josh Reddinghouse is a solid all-around fighter who's fought in so many different promotions, a very, very good test. And we saw him prevail there. And then following that up against Murdoch, I was pretty impressed against Murdoch, just how easily he was able to get to the ground, how easily he was able to get to the hips. I think it's a pretty clear dogger pass. I've got a small bet on Highstand plus 140 that I just made right now, because I was like, you know what? This is a clear dogger pass. You got to go for it. So I'm in.
The one thing I would just add about that Murdoch fight is that I remember hearing, and I did take a note on it on the fight, was that Murdoch said after the fact, I ruptured my knee right at the beginning. And so that was something that stood out to me as like, oh, maybe he couldn't even defend the takedowns at all, like had nothing to plant on. Because we did see that the Reddinghouse fight was very close. I think it ended up being a split decision, and they had to do the third round, and it was a split decision. So it's like that was a really close fight. Could have went to Reddinghouse. Reddinghouse just didn't seem to have the cardio to go at the end because he was like getting up halfway to his feet and then just not exploding out. He was like, F it. Like it just seemed like he was realizing I'm probably going to lose this fight. And they had some kind of a friendly relationship. It's like the younger brother beating up on the older brother type deal. It was a weird fight to me. I do think that we're going to see something a little bit different here because I do think Turcios is like, for all of his faults, he's confident as shit. And he is he's a talker. He kind of gets in guys' heads, I feel like. And, people underrate that sometimes, but I do think it can really piss somebody off. And especially if you're a wrestler and somebody's starting to piss you off, what are you going to want to do? You're going to want to take them down. And it's exhausting. And that's a point that Weezy raised, and it's a really smart one. I stand, if there's a criticism in those Reddinghouse fights, it's that he looks completely exhausted. He's not really trying to finish. He's trying to hold on for the end of the fight. And that's also probably, at least in part, a factor of inexperience. So, Mac, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, like full disclosure, honestly, I don't really know much about these two guys. I understand why Turcios, my French Canadian in me wants to always keep calling him Turquoise, but Turcios, he definitely should be the favorite here, in my opinion. The thing I honestly feel like the under 2.5 rounds at plus 160 with this lower level fight. It might be lower level to us, but I said this before about other things on this card involving the Ultimate Fighter. This is definitely the biggest fight of both of these guys' career. This is, it's billed as a title fight. This is a finale fight. The winner will be dubbed the tough finale winner, right? So this is a big fight, and it's a 3-round fight, and I feel like both these guys are going to come out and go after it. I just I just feel like Brady's best chance to victory is to come out there and I don't think, like you guys said, I don't think like him lasting the full 15 minutes at the level of Turcios, kind of, it's just not there. I think the longer the fight goes, the more it favors Turcios, but I think that Brady's path to victory is early. And I just see that I feel like there's going to be a finish on this one. That plus like 160 line, I like that a lot. Just from a surface level, I'm not obviously overly confident in it, but like it's just from the intangible factor of this being legitimately the biggest fight of both these guys' lives. I feel like they're both going to come out and get it. And I wouldn't be shocked if we saw like a first round knockout or a first round stoppage here, just because of the level of fight that this is for both of these guys. I don't think that there's going to be like the type of sit back and wait the fight to come to them. I feel like both guys are going to come out looking to put a stamp on it quickly and get out of there with the title of the tough finale winner.
I love it. I think that it's going to be a fun fight. I think that, as low-level fights go, I do think low-level fights are much more likely to produce finishes than high-level fights. Mismatches being the best of all worlds. But, if you got two lower-level guys in there, it's more likely that one of them is going to get finished. And so I don't hate that look on the under. It is sitting at plus 150 on betonline.ag. And just so we can leave the people with the knowledge, Turcios minus 154, high stand is plus 134 on betonline.ag right now. So if you want to get in, Paul is talking about that plus 140 number. Other books are showing a lower number. That could indicate that the line's going to move in that direction. Just something to be wary of, folks. If you want to get in on high stand, I would do it now because Turcios was minus 175 earlier this week. Now he's minus 155. That could continue to shrink if people continue to play this underdog price. So moving right along, boys, we are on the co-main event of the evening, and It doesn't feel like one. 5-1, Brian Battle, 6-1, Gilbert Urbina, and, a little anticlimactic, Tresean Gore, the talk of the house, the guy who maybe impressed me the most when I was going back and watching some of those fights in terms of his patience, his poise, his composure. For a guy with not a lot of experience, he was keeping guys on the end of his punches beautifully. And he was doing a really good job establishing range, giving somebody something to think about if they tried to enter. I really liked what I saw from him. He knocked out Urbina with a jab, and now Urbina's in the final, right? So interesting enough matchup. I think Brian Battle has kind of been the revelation of the show. Seems very talented to me. Seems to have wide-ranging skills. Seems to be very coachable. Seems to be a violent, vicious guy. Seems to be pretty durable. So I like a lot of what I see from Brian Battle. Gilbert Urbina, I can't say that I've loved what I saw from him, but I think that, he at least has some upside to his game, right? Who did he beat in the house? I forget. I watched them all in rapid succession, so I'd have to look at it. But he beat Gillmore, the guy who's fighting Petroski. So it's like, what do we really garner from that matchup? Gillmore, we're kind of saying should be an auto fade to a guy who's 6-1. So it's like, I don't know that we have the greatest gauge of the skills of these guys, but I would have to think that Brian Battle is probably a little more seasoned in my mind. Uncle Weezy, how do you feel about it, brother?
Yeah, this is a hard one to call. I mean, both these guys are pretty young. Urbina's 25, Battle's 26. We got a 3-inch reach advantage for Battle here. Urbina's 2 inches taller. I went back and I watched some regional, seen footage on Urbina today. He was fighting at 175 in Combate. So, I don't know if he's a natural middleweight or not. He might be one of those tweeners. But Battle's one of these guys who just he doesn't have a base. He didn't grow up wrestling. He didn't grow up boxing, any of that. He's one of these guys that walked into a mixed martial arts gym. He's one of these new school guys that doesn't really have a base, and he just started fighting. And he's looking pretty damn good, man. The wins have been really impressive. He's strong. He's got great kickboxing. He hits hard. And when Petroski was taking him down and working him, he was very patient. He didn't put himself into terrible situations. He fought hands. He did all the things that you want to do when you want to see somebody who shows that they're calm when they get into those bad situations and that they're not going to panic. And to have Petroski on top of you, you're a 5-1 fighter, and not only that, the emotions that were going through his head after Petroski lied about Battle headbutting him, he stayed so calm after that. I just see a lot of things that just pass the eye test for me with Battle thus far. And Urbina's a really good grappler. He looks to get on people's backs. He seems to be pretty good at that. I could see him having some success here early in the grappling, but I think Battle will be patient. I don't think he's going to make any mistakes. He's strong. He gets back up. And I think eventually, because Urbina just has not shown good striking defense. I mean, that Tresean Gore fight was, everything that Gore threw landed and landed hard. And he might have been knocked down 3 or 4 times in that fight. I lost count. So, I got to lean Brian Battle here. I got to pick him to win fairly confidently. I like the fight. I like the cage IQ. I like the patience. And I like the power, and I like the fact that he seems to make good decisions in there, and Urbina's defense leaves a lot to be desired. So I'm going to pick Battle here.
I'm riding with you, Uncle Weezy. Good call. Paul, do you agree with us? Do you disagree? How do you feel?
Share a lot of the sentiments of you and Weezy on this one. I think Brian Battle looked pretty solid, and he hits like a motherfucker when he's in the clinch. Like a lot of those clinch strikes, he was getting taken down by Petroski, but that knee was in the clinch up against the cage. Petroski's a stronger, better wrestler, in my opinion, than Gilbert Urbina. So if that's his path, that's Gilbert Urbina's path. It's like he's going to be eating knees and, elbows from the clinch. Like Brian Battle's got a lot of good things going for him. Could he get taken down and control for 3 rounds? Sure, but I don't think this is the matchup to do it. He already got by what is a much tougher matchup in Petroski, in my opinion. The horrible thing about this is that we didn't actually get the real final, because Gore versus Battle was going to be a real good fight, and I'm not entirely sure who I was going to pick in that one. Probably Gore, to be perfectly honest. I really like what I saw from his distance striking. But I think you see minus 175 all the way down to minus 160 or so out there. I think the only reason why this isn't like minus 250 is because people just didn't watch Tough and have no idea who he is. Because I think I feel pretty confident about Brian Battle getting the dub here. I've just been struggling trying to find what do I want to parlay him with. I know I'm getting greedy. I shouldn't parlay it. I should probably just hit Brian Battle straight up.
Maybe Alessio.
But I'm a degenerate. Alessio is probably not a bad look either. But my plans with that one are to hit it live. But there's no guarantee in hitting it live. Maybe he just comes out and
if he deads him in the first round, there's no live bet.
All right, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna parlay Brian Battle with Alessio Di Chirico. Let's go.
That's right.
Let's do it. Let's fucking go. I'm in.
Boys, are we back? I'm sorry about that. You lost me during my celebration. I was like, we finally converted Paul. We got him to bet one live on air. I think that we're all back in business. And if so,
I think you're out of business right now.
Now you're out of business, dude. You froze completely. But that's all right, dude. Al, why don't you take us away on the Battle Urbina fight while we're waiting on Liam here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, honestly, I don't really know. I saw the fights that Battle was in. He was pretty, definitely impressive. I share the sentiment with you that the fight against Gore definitely would have been the fight to make. This is one, though, actually, I kind of feel like this one's kind of destined to go the distance, although I know that the market kind of agrees with him here. I see fight goes the distance, yes, minus 115. Like I said, I feel like Urbina's, like you guys said, Urbina's path to victory here is obviously to wrestle, and I don't really see him having a top control game for 3 straight rounds, but I do see him having success early. But I feel like Battle's just going to sway the tide of this fight in the later rounds. I can see him, I share the confidence. I see him winning a 29-28 decision. And this is one of those fights where I feel like usually I don't like to double up, but I feel like Battle. Yeah, I feel like Battle wins the spot. Good parlay spot, but that ends up being at like minus 155. I might not even bother with the parlay. Might just bet it straight up because I am fairly confident. I agree with Paul. It could be like minus 200 here. It's just kind of perception is not reality. But I feel like this fight goes the distance. I just kind of want to sit back and get a better number on it. Over 2.5 rounds, I also like that too. So I'm going to sit back and try to line shop and try to get the best of the number. But this is one of those fights, unlike the other finale where I think the under is where the value is. I feel like this one's kind of destined to go the distance. That's my take on it.
And Sean Brady actually couldn't even get Gilbert Urbina out of there.
Yeah. Credit to that and appreciate that shout, Uncle Weezy. Just wanted to say sorry about the technical difficulties, folks. Glad that you're sticking with us. We still got 19 live viewers rocking with us despite the fact that I dropped off there for a second. And God bless each and every one of you for it. Thank you. Without further ado, folks, I think that we're ready for the real main event of the evening at 145 pounds. Featherweight's been producing some fire main events this year. We can harken back to the Max Holloway, Calvin Kattar Classic that we had in January on ABC. And we've got another one here, boys. I think that this could be another classic matchup. Really fun. We've got a stylistic clash, right? 2 guys that both would prefer to come out there and kickbox at range. We got Edson Barboza, one of the best to do it from a striking perspective in terms of his aesthetics. Just a beautiful striker. Has produced some of the most pretty knockouts in UFC history. They're on all the highlight reels for a reason. And then on the other side here, we've got Giga Chikadze, an accomplished kickboxer, a guy who's got real talent, who's trying to make a run in this deep division, and he's been doing quite a good job so far. I'll be honest, I had Cub Swanson for small exposure the last time out, and I was surprised with how quickly he was able to dispatch of Cub. Granted, I think that was a little bit more to do with Cub starting slow than it was to do with Giga just being this world-level killer, but gotta say, it was impressive to me. Cub Swanson's a guy who likes to get out there and strike as well, and he didn't have much time to do it. He was already out of there. So, interesting fight on paper. A striker's delight. Uncle Weezy, how do you feel about it, man?
I love this fight. Can't wait for it. We got Chikadze, 3 years younger, an inch taller. The reach is about the same. The experience, though, for Barboza is double. 31 fights to Chikadze's 15. 25 UFC fights for Barboza, only 7 for Chikadze. So, Barboza, the far more experienced mixed martial artist. But when it comes to the skill sets, they're both at kickboxers at heart. So it's nice. We got a striker versus striker matchup here. Both these guys showing a ton of power. Barboza landing a knockdown on 1.17 of the significant strikes that he lands. And for Chikadze, it's 1.42. Those are really good numbers for both of them. Both of them showing really good striking defense, too. 60% for Chikadze, about 60% for Barboza. Both of these guys in Chikadze, he's looking at about 89% of his fights take place at striking range. For Barboza, it's about 80. So we should see this be a striking match. It says hopefully won't be one of those striker versus striker matchups where everyone's just trying to take each other down, or like the two wrestlers where it becomes a striking matchup. This should be one of the ones that should be predictable. If people think that Edson Barboza is going to use his wrestling, let me give you some numbers. Edson Barboza's got 25 fights and he's only attempted 18 takedowns, and he's only gotten 8 of them. So he gets about 1 takedown for every 3 fights in the UFC. So I don't really see that being a path for him. I see that whoever's going to win this fight is going to win it standing. If we look at the strength of schedule, obviously that goes to Barboza. I think that the conditioning is going to be what makes the difference here. We've never seen Chikadze go 5 rounds. We've seen him get dead tired in the 3rd. He's admitted in the past that he probably shouldn't be cutting down to 145 pounds, and he's doing it. He's extremely skinny. It just doesn't work well for his conditioning. He kills himself to make weight. Now, we know that Barboza is too, though, because Barboza used to fight at 155. Now he's cutting down to 145. And I remember when he announced that he was going to go down to 145, you say, well, where the hell is how is he going to cut weight? The guy's already got a 6-pack at 155. So I think Barboza will be the better conditioned athlete. He's got a fucking chin on him. So as long as Giga doesn't land a body kick, which if you land those liver kicks, that'll shut anybody down. I think it's Barboza's leg kicks against Chikadze's body kicks. I think the leg kicks are going to win. I think the conditioning is going to make the difference. And I'm picking Edson Barboza inside the distance by knockout.
Nice. And with conviction. I will say, I think that there's a lot of merit to what, we're hearing. But I will also say that Giga Chikadze, the one thing I saw that stood out to me was he did land that Giga kick a lot of times in the Emmers fight. But nobody talks about it because Emmers was fine. And I do think it's interesting enough. It's like he landed that flush one against Cub Swanson, and obviously he's done it in kickboxing before. So it's not like there's no merit to the claim, but I just think it's interesting, right, that you go back, it's a split decision, and he landed, many open side kicks to the body. Still wasn't able to put him away. Wasn't really able to hurt him with any of those shots either, and kind of lost out on the cardio battle over the course of that fight where – we mentioned before, it's not only that he was getting out wrestled a little bit by Jamall Emmers, which was true. It was that he was getting out struck, which is, a fundamentally scary proposition if you're getting out struck at the 7.5 minute mark against somebody like Jamall Emmers. If you're going to be in there against Edson Barboza, who just torched, my man Shane Burgos, local friend of Section 9 and an absolute stud from this area. And I was very concerned going into that fight because I know how hard Edson Barboza hits, and I know that Shane is a gangster, and he stays in the pocket, and he's not afraid to get hit. And that's a horrible, horrible idea against Edson. Edson is not going to get the same look from Giga. I don't think Giga is going to stand there and present himself the whole time. However, when Giga gets tired, he's forced to present himself more. He's not able to skirt around the cage as much. And so, we had somebody ask in the chat whether Giga throws punches. He certainly does when he becomes really tired and can't throw the kicks as much and starts setting down and throwing 3- and 4-piece hooking combinations. but they're less technical than what he can offer when he's fresh. When he's fresh, it's kicks to both sides of the body, one after the other, both of them land in 3 seconds. It's like that is high-level stuff. But I feel like he's kind of like a wrestler. He's got 7-8 minutes of it when it's at its best. And then he has a functional, workable product that's not nearly as intimidating. Paul, how do you feel?
The only thing I'm kind of scared about is that everybody and their mother has a bet on Edson Barboza this week, including myself. I think it really comes down to just volume. Just with Giga, it's just like pretty much all of his fights, unless he's getting a finish. And let's face it, like Edson Barboza would have absolutely starched this version of Cub Swanson. He would have done disgusting things to Jamie Simmons. They were both good finishes for Giga there, but like I don't really take very much away from him. Edson's been fighting the best guys in the world. Even at 35, he looks probably at the top of his career, or right up there with some of the best performances of his career. His last time out there against Shane Burgos, just the striking is on point. The volume game is really in his favor. He's always been very, very, very durable. The best way to beat him has been to take him down. Giga's not going to do that. If anybody does have a grappling advantage, it would be Edson. Everything basically just points to Edson Barboza here. I think the only way you could even bet Giga Chikadze is Giga by knockout. Yeah, the Jamall Emmers fight. Jamall Emmers, similar reach. A lot of these fights that Giga's been winning, he's got massive, massive advantages, whether it's in, 4 inches of reach against Jamie Simmons, 4 inches of reach against Cub Swanson. When he went up against Jamall Emmers, he was getting hit a little bit. Now, maybe that's because he was mixing in the wrestling on him, and that made him change his game plan a little bit. But Jamall Emmers outlanded him. He was going toe-to-toe with him on the feet a little bit, landing strikes, probably not fighting the smartest game plan, because why don't you just take it to the mat every single time? But I just thought that was kind of interesting. And then round 3, Giga looked fucking terrible. Now I'm supposed to think that this guy's ready for a 5-round fight. Like, I've been shocked the entire week that this hasn't skyrocketed up to minus 150 and above. I think Edson should probably be a 2-1 favorite in this spot, but somebody's keeping Giga close to a pick 'em here. I know it's starting to move a little bit now. I see it's like minus 120, but it's like I got in at minus 110. I think up to minus 150, it's still fine. Like, I see a lot of advantages for Edson Barboza here. I'm kind of puzzled that it's been sticking around so long.
Yeah, I think that where it does get a little interesting to me is that we've talked about why Chikadze's cardio is maybe not as trustworthy as it should be, but I actually think that Edson shares some of those concerns. The Ige fight, he actually had Dan Ige like so hurt that it's kind of remarkable that Ige was able to recover. Like, and when's the last time you seen Dan Ige pull guard? Got hit with a knee to the body and was like, oh yeah, F this. I need to lay down for a minute. And he is like just taking shots on the ground because he's like, I can't get back up for a minute. I think that the fact that he allowed him to work his way back into that fight is something that concerns me. I think that, Dan Ige used a little bit more wrestling and grappling, I think, to work his way into that fight as well. But, Edson can get pressured from a grappling perspective. I've seen people throwing that around in the chat, but he can get pressured from a striking perspective too. People don't remember it because he ended up knocking him out in vicious fashion, but Beneil Dariush was walking him around the octagon with pressure on the feet before he got knocked out. And, Giga tends to be a back-footed striker because he's comfortable doing that and he's comfortable throwing off them kicks. But I also think that he's a clever enough striker and a practiced enough striker that if he decides to implement a little bit more of a pressure-heavy game for this matchup, he could probably do that. But we've also seen Edson adapt and adjust to other opponents in the past. It's just pressure of any kind that he really has a hard time dealing with because he likes to be able to set down, whether it's for his punching combinations, his kicks, his spins. He likes to be able to set in space with a radius around him. And if you close out that space, I think that Giga's most known for his kicks. His punching mechanics are beautiful in the first round. Like, he could definitely knock somebody out with strikes in the pocket. just not where you see him have his most success. He's not like the most heavy-handed guy, but places his punches beautifully. And he has been like intercepting people with right straights, left straights. He switches stances in every fight that I've seen. So I do think that, for 7.5 minutes, Giga is going to probably be very, very competitive, if not winning minutes at range. I just think that it could be a dicey situation for him if there's any kind of resistance from a grappling perspective, by example. That could throw off his cardio and send him on a downward spiral. I think that it's an interesting competitive fight, though. I do think there's merit to it being close to a pick'em fight. And maybe I'm crazy. Mac, how do you feel?
Yeah, I think that because of the coin flip nature of this fight, I honestly feel like there's almost no argument to be had. Well, no, I just feel like there's nothing more than just like a slight argument to be had on betting against either side in this matchup. You look at Chikadze, man. He came into the UFC. He came into the UFC, his first fight against Brendan Davis, underdog, wins by decision. Against Jamall Emmers, underdog, wins by decision. Erwin Rivera, he was a massive favorite, but again, this was a fight that he was supposed to win easily, yet it went decision. And then against Omar Morales, another decision win as an underdog. So he's kind of like earned his keep a little bit. He's definitely exceeded the expectations. A lot of people talk about his kickboxing pedigree. The dude wasn't that great of a kickboxer. Like, his technique, obviously awesome, but as far as competing in glory, he wasn't in any title fights or anything like that. He's not Cedric Biumbe or anything like that. But anyways, I feel like if you're backing Chikadze here, similar to like Liam said, very dangerous in the opening moments of this fight. But with Barboza, I take away a lot, even just out of his losses. His most recent losses, all decisions. And I feel like that makes him dangerous here against a guy who, this is a good live betting spot too, because I feel like Chikadze is probably going to end up leading this fight, maybe 2 rounds to none. But we've seen Chikadze fall off a cliff conditioning wise, and I could see Barboza rallying and coming back and winning this fight 3 rounds to 2 after dropping the first 2 rounds. I feel like this fight's going to go decision. But if you are backing Chikadze, I think that there's a case to be made for backing the under, because like you said, Liam, very dangerous in the opening portions of this fight. But yeah, I got to go. I actually got to go with the value side here because of the toss-up nature of it. If it ends up being 4-4 going into the 5th, I want to be on the plus money side, although I have no issue with backing Barboza. I just feel like there's more. I don't know. I've had, apart from just handicapping, I've just had a rough go betting on or against Edson Barboza. So I got to go with Chikadze here just because it's a 50-50 fight. And I want to be on the side of plus money. But basically, like what I said, Chikadze early or Barboza by decision. That's basically how I see it going down. That's basically it for me. Like what Paul said, Chikadze inside the distance, not a terrible bet, but I know that Chikadze has a ton of decisions. He's won 4 of his first UFC fights by decision. I think the longer this fight goes, the more it favors Barboza exponentially. So if we know that, he knows that. So Chikadze's probably going to try to come out and finish this fight early. If he can't do it, then it's Barboza's fight to win. That's how I see it.
And I got to be honest, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think that Giga's win is probably a little front-loaded here. Would I be absolutely stunned if Giga holds on to win a 3-2 decision? I wouldn't be stunned. Would I be surprised if he got finished in the 4th or 5th round? No, I wouldn't be surprised by that either. I have seen the cardio collapse that people are talking about, but I also will say this. For all of the credit we'll give Edson for that Shane Burgos win, and it was very impressive, we also got to say he gets hit a lot in all of his fights. He's willing to exchange. He's a badass. And I do think that that's a little scary. If you're willing to exchange with Giga, you could get caught early. we've seen Edson when he does lose, man, sometimes he gets caught early. Justin Gaethje, I thought, was a prime example where it's before he's ready. It's before he's set. He's still skirting around the cage trying to find his footing. He gets caught and it's all over. And Giga, because he's got the long-range tools, I don't think that is out of the realm of possibility. But with that said, guys, it has been a wonderful show, but we're approaching the 2.5-hour mark, and I've got to be courteous and kind to my guests who have been so courteous and kind to me. Boys, I appreciate you guys coming on the show today, and I think that we've done a heck of a job breaking down this card for the people, and I hope everybody who has been watching has appreciated. We still got 19 live viewers rocking with us, and we appreciate each and every one of you. If you could go ahead, like this video, get subscribed to the channel, I'd really appreciate it if you do. And before we get out of here, boys, I want to give each and every one of you guys an opportunity to plug. Where can the people find your work? I know that my man, Uncle Weezy, can be found on Stat Diggers every Sunday. I know that you can find this man, Uncle Weezy, doing balls deep breakdowns. Uncle Weezy, tell the people where they can find you, my friend.
Yeah, man, check me out on Twitter at MMA Weezy or my YouTube channel, Uncle Weezy. I do balls deep breakdowns of fights. I do a full card breakdown every week that I call Just the Tip. I'm on Stat Diggers on Pub Sports Radio every Sunday night. I'm doing MMA Lock of the Night's Ultimate Weigh-In show tomorrow night. I'm doing Z's Fair Play podcast tomorrow late afternoon. I got to tell you, I feel like the prettiest girl at the dance, Liam. All you guys have been so welcoming to me, inviting me on your shows. Anytime you need me, just reach out. I had so much fun doing this with you guys. It was great hanging out with you.
Uncle Weezy, we appreciate you so much for it. You did a wonderful job. The reason everybody wants to hang out with you is because you always got something smart and interesting to say, and you're very positive in your presentation. We appreciate the heck out of you for coming on, man, and I know that the people have benefited from it tremendously. Paul, how about you, man? What do you got for us?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Paul Shag, which is in the bottom left corner of my screen. I guess we're a 4-box, so it's in the left corner of my picture. Or you can follow our podcast, Dogger Pass Podcast. We've been doing it for like 8 years now. Me and Cody Saftik. I mean, yeah, if you want to talk about fights or follow our stuff, if you thought something I said was interesting, you ever seen me before, give me a follow on that. Glad to jump on with you guys.
Paul, we appreciate it tremendously. An absolute OG of the game. Dogger Pass, if you haven't listened, it's just must listen every week. Always interested to hear what you guys have to say about these fights. Plus, it is an informative, fun way to do it. Mayo Media Networks, check out all the stuff they've got on offer. Always bringing the heat, and we appreciate them for doing so. Then we got my man, Al Mac Odds, combatodds.ca. Al Mac, tell the people all the places they can find you, brother.
Yeah, hit me up on Twitter and combatodds.ca, as well as on my YouTube. I put way too much time breaking down Tyron Woodley versus Jake Paul on my YouTube channel. Put like a 20-minute video out for that. So if you're interested, hit that up. Otherwise, it just keeps going. We're not even, we're still 2 days away from this fight card. So there's still some research to be had, to be completely honest. And it just keeps going. The MMA world just keeps spinning.
Yes, sir, and it is a beautiful thing. As I say each and every week, guys, please make sure that you're gambling legally, you're doing so responsibly. Make sure that this is fun for you at the end of the day. That's what we're all here to do. But we're also here to make money, to get smarter, to try and turn a buck. And so it is us, the good guys. That's me, that's Uncle Weezy, that's Paul, that's Al Mac, and that's each and every one of you versus those bookies each and every week. Hopefully we can take an ass shaving off them this week. I think that we've got a couple good spots and good opportunities to do so. So with all that said, I wish you all a great night. I thank you all very much. God bless. Good luck with all your action. And until next time, this has been Liam Picks Fights. Thank you all so much. We'll see you when we do it all again next week.